Good day or good evening to you, wherever you're watching. Welcome to the penultimate night of action here in Doha, the Qatari capital, at the 17th IAAF World Championships, where for 9 full days now, the action has unfolded with a series of breathtaking performances by the world's best track and field athletes. We're on the seafront stretch of road on Doha Bay tonight, known as the Corniche. And as for the ladies, 8 days ago, the men's marathon field are gathered to race over the standard 42.2 kilometre distance. Well, it's a warm evening, but with the race due off at 11:59 p.m. here, that's in around 10 or 12 minutes, it's much cooler this evening than for several days. The athletes, however, still have to negotiate 6 anti-clockwise laps of this dead-flat, fast circuit, and with no pacemakers, we're guaranteed world-class racing and high drama from the 73 starters. Well, I've counted no less than 27 athletes who have run under 2:10 for the marathon. It's a high-caliber field. I'm joined in the commentary box by Mara Yamauchi, 2-time Olympian and second fastest Briton of all time, as we see that glorious spiral mosque not far away. Well, Mara, this field is strong. The humidity is down significantly from previous nights, and great racing is surely very, very likely.
Yes, Tim, it certainly is a high-quality field here tonight. East Africans have really dominated the marathon in recent years, and I'm sure we'll see more of that this evening. But World Championship marathons are well known for springing a few surprises, and there are several athletes here tonight who could upset that African dominance and sneak onto the medal podium. If you look at the historical medal tally at these World Championships in the men's marathon, Kenya and Ethiopia are top, but Spain is the third nation in terms of medals. And if you look at top 8, Japan and Italy have also done very well in the past.
Well, the crowds built nicely for the women's race as the race wore on. It was a bit of a war of attrition for the ladies. I think some 40% of the field failing to finish, although the athletes have known the conditions here would be very warm and humid for a long time. Some just unable to cope or running themselves almost to a standstill on this quick circuit where judgment is all the more essential. Well, let's take a look at this circuit now here to the eastern side of Doha, that glorious half-moon-shaped Doha Bay. The athletes start roughly in the center of the curve on the land side carriageway. They go through the finish line after 195 meters, and then they have 6 laps of this 7-kilometer loop through 1K. They're heading southwards to the southern extremity, a left-hand turn. We'll have them heading north on that right-hand carriageway, and sea to their right. Nice breeze this evening, by the way, much cooler than any other evening so far as they head northwards up towards the central business district. There are extra drinks tables out on the course, as well as their own special drinks tables every 5K. They take a U-turn there at the northern extremity up near the Sheraton Hotel, heading back down south, coming towards the conclusion of their first lap. That's the 6-kilometer point, and then they come down through their original start line, still heading southwards, of course, through that start line to the finish line, at which point they have got 5 full laps to go. Well, the weather has been talked about for a great deal over the last 10 days or so. 29 degrees centigrade, it's a clear night, and that north-northeastern wind, 14 kilometers an hour, is quite strong compared with anything we've had over the previous days in these championships, and it certainly has brought the humidity down. It feels much, much cooler outside our cabin here, right beside the finish line. Well, the athletes getting ready now. Mara, with that start, what, about 8 minutes away, something like that. How much warm-up do you actually need in conditions like this? You know, it's still 29 degrees centigrade out there.
Yeah, even though it's cooler than the previous nights we've been here at the Corniche, it's still very warm. So absolute minimal warm-up is what I would be doing if I were in this race. In cooler conditions, I might do 5 to 10 minute jog, then some stretching, then some stride outs. But you've got to remember, for a marathon, any energy you expend before the race isn't going to be available to you during the race, and also you don't want to heat your body up at all, so the absolute bare minimum is what's needed here.
Callum Hawkins there, we saw the man who was 4th in the colours of Great Britain 2 years ago in London. Indeed, 5 of the top 10 from London are here. There's the defending champion, and he is defending one of that quartet of Kenyans, because of course if you have a champion from your country, they get a buy into the championship, so 3 more athletes are allowed. I'll tell you how good the Kenyan team is. The other 3 athletes, apart from Kirui here, Geoffrey Kirui, the reigning champion, are quicker than him at the marathon distance. It's a very high caliber Kenyan squad, and indeed the last 6 titles have gone to the men from East Africa. That said, all 3 Ethiopian ladies dropped out in the women's race 8 days ago, so there are no guarantees of a strong run for anyone. Well, the world record to a 1:39 by Kipchoge, that got a real shock just last Sunday in Berlin when Kenenisa Bekele ran 2:01:41. He missed it by 2 seconds in the German capital. The championship record by another Kirui, that was back in 2009 in Berlin, 2:06:54. The fastest time in the world this year. Well, as I said, Bekele in Berlin 6 days ago. Well, the men from the Northern Hemisphere might have struggled considerably more tonight if the conditions have been as warm, Mara, as they were last week for the ladies' race. I mean, these men, relatively speaking, are blessed, because stepping outside our cabin, I couldn't believe about 20 minutes ago when I went out the last time how much cooler it is. It feels normal. I know we're acclimatized, we've been here 10 or 12 days, but it is so much cooler. Yeah, it really feels different. We were told a few minutes ago that the humidity was at 48.6%, and in the ladies' marathon a week ago it was 74%, and the temperature was 32 degrees, so much more favourable conditions this evening for the men's marathon. And the race walk events also have been held on this corniche, 31 and 32 degrees, and humidity in the 70% we saw for those races. So today there's been a real change in the weather, and I think we could see faster times than we were expecting. Well, 73 starters are out there on the road, just limbering up, minimal warm-up required. The Japanese, well, they're expected to put up a strong showing, used to warm conditions like this, although their squad includes the extraordinary Yuki Kawauchi, who has done 95 marathons. He's a man who normally does 9 to 10 marathons a year, when of course most elite marathon runners run just 2. He is a phenomenon, Yuki Kawauchi, who turned professional a year or so back. Ironically, this year he's broken his habit of running 9 or 10 marathons a year, and this tonight will be only his 4th marathon in 2019. Let's remember, Tim, that the Japanese Olympic trials were held just a few weeks ago, and 30 of the top Japanese men stayed at home for that. Despite that, the 3 Japanese here have personal bests of 2:08, 2:09 and 2:10, so they're some way down the rankings in Japan, but still very fast personal bests. I was going to say that the conditions would be a bit of a level up when it's very, very hot, because some people just cannot cope with the heat, but it is cool enough to say racing conditions might be normal for these men. And let's have a look at them now. There's quite a big field here. As you can see in this one, the national record holder from Burundi, Olivier Irabaruta, is here. So is De Almeida Paulo, London 2012 8th placer. From Brazil, Zersney Tadesse there near the bottom of that page, the Eritrean, is a 5-time world half marathon champion, 37 years old now with a best of 2:08. He's never really got to grips with the marathon. I wonder if tonight he can turn that around. Well, the Ethiopians have the 3 fastest in the field in Decisive, Geremu and Wasihun. But Callum Hawkins of Britain, 4th in London 2 years ago, ran really well in London this year to show he's recovered from that collapse from heat stroke at the Commonwealth Games last year. The European champion in 2014, Daniele Miucci, goes in the field, this one for Italy. And there's that Kenyan trio with the defending champion Kirui, quartet I should say, is so strong. Watch them. We'll see plenty of them. Serot Batachir of Mongolia. This is his 9th consecutive World Championship appearance. He's 37 years old. He'll celebrate his 38th birthday on Monday. So as he finishes, it will be tomorrow for him. Alphonse Felix Simbu of Tanzania. Well, he's the bronze medalist from London 2017. 2 years back, just held off Callum Hawkins to take that pressured bronze medal. And Arikan for Turkey is twice a European champion at 10,000 metres. Stephen Kiprotich of Uganda, the London 2012 Olympic champion, and the following year he went out to Moscow and won there as well at the World Championships in sweltering conditions. Mutai is the Commonwealth Games silver medalist. And Zimbabwe have entered a full trio. Their personal best in the 2:14 to 2:15 range. We're not expecting them to feature significantly, but I'd love to be proven wrong. Well, there are a number of very strong athletes here tonight, and we'll pick out just a few of them for you as they come to the line, with the start just a couple of minutes away. There is a man who will be wearing 11:07 on his back, Daniele Meucci of Italy, the 2014 European champion. He finished 6th in London a couple of years ago, and you'd expect the Italians, wouldn't you, to cope well with these warm conditions.
Introducing some of the leading athletes first, the former European champion, 6th at the 2017 World Championships.
Well, the last 9 titles have been won by men from Africa, and the last time a European won gold was Abel Anton in Spain, back in 1999. It was in Spain, in Seville. There's Solomon Muta of Uganda, the Commonwealth Games silver medalist last year. Bronze medalist at the World Championships in 2015 in Beijing, where again it was very warm indeed. He might be one to watch, because on the Gold Coast, some 21 months or so ago, it was very, very warm as well. Looking nervous is normal. It's controlling those nerves. Mozinet Geremi of Ethiopia. Well, one of that tremendously strong trio. He's the 4th fastest man in history. The world #2 this year as well. He's in very, very good form. Expect the Ethiopians to run strongly. Callum Hawkins, well, as I mentioned, 4th in the last World Championships. The Scottish record holder. His mum and dad out here, coached by his father. And he certainly learnt lessons at the Commonwealth Games when he was leading until the very, very last stages, and he collapsed from heat stroke. He says he has been training in his garden shed. We'll tell you more about that shortly. There's Lalisa Decisive, reigning New York champion, 2 times Boston champion, so consistent. He was the silver medalist in 2013 in the sweltering heat of Moscow, the Ethiopian. And the defending champion, last but not least, Jeffrey Kirui, Boston champion in 2017. A very, very smart racer. Boston is one of those courses where you need to run a clever race, and he's done that time and again and defends his title here now. Nervous moments then for these 73 starters from 42 nations. The officials making sure toes behind the line, please, gentlemen. So we are underway then with the men's marathon at the 17th IAAF World Championships on this floodlit Corniche. They run south towards the finish line. When they cross this second yellow line, they've got 100 meters to go. And in the women's race, the eventual champion, Mara, blasted through the last 100 meters. She must have covered it in about 14 seconds. I couldn't believe how fresh she looked.
She did look like she had a lot left at the end, didn't she? Really dominated that ladies' race. Of course, much cooler conditions today here, so I think we could see some fast times. Every single race we've seen at the Corniche this week has been won in the slowest time in World Championships history. The women's marathon was some 2 minutes slower than the previous slowest winning time, which was recorded in Osaka in 2007. So let's see what the men can do this evening.
Well, Braha there of Sweden, moving to the 4 and looking very comfortable. The early pace, understandably, very, very sheepish. They're reluctant to push on strongly here. Nobody is going to go out really hard early. But of course, if it is a slow first half, then you can expect fireworks somewhere in the second half. Somebody will lose patience.
The Swedish athlete Braha, we just saw there, Tim, is the oldest athlete in this field at 42 years of age.
Yeah, remarkable. And, well, expect the unexpected. As we see Ayala there, heading out at a very crisp tempo and pushing it on so much faster than might have been expected. Ayala of Paraguay. He's a 2:10 performer, so not somebody to be dismissed. And this is, well, I guess it throws a spanner into the works, doesn't it? It's fascinating. I mean, he's building up a big lead here. The big names, the main protagonists back in the pack behind the 29-year-old, don't want to go with it. He has the ability to run a strong race here. So they won't want this lead to become too huge. If it does grow into a couple 100 meters or more, then you will see people setting off after him, I'm sure. The Paraguayan, I suspect, Mara, would be used to warm conditions.
Absolutely, yeah. And he's the national record holder at 10,000 meters, the half marathon and the marathon. And so some pedigree, quite experienced in the marathon, 11 marathons run so far. This really takes me back to the Beijing Olympics in 2008. We all expected it to be a roastingly hot day, but 2 days before it poured with rain and it was actually much cooler on the day. And the woman who eventually won, Romania's Tomescu Dita, took off relatively early in the race, not quite this early, and we all said, goodbye, we'll see you at 40k, and she just ran away and won the race. But Ayala making a very, very aggressive move here. You can see his pretty good progression there. 2:19 runner back in 2015, and he's improved pretty much every year down to 2:10.27. So the entire rest of the field just letting him go.
Well, he's the Paraguayan national record holder, and he's quite useful. He's run a 63-minute half marathon. Nothing special at 5,000 or 10,000 on the track, but he's running 1,500s and 3,000 in age group championships in years gone by. So while he was only 135th in Rio at the Olympic Games, he's certainly come on a bit over these last 3 years. Decisive leading the chasing pack, but look how strongly he's striding out. Of course, it's easy to look strong and impressive and well balanced and enjoying yourself in the early kilometers. Just about anybody in that big pack behind him could be doing this in the early miles. It's a case of how well you can sustain it and maintain the tempo. But interesting, Mara, that Decisive has gone to the front of the main pack, maybe a little bit frustrated just how slowly they are meandering along the road, these silver medals from 2013.
Yeah, absolutely. The Ethiopians have an absolutely formidable team, top 3 on the start list in terms of time. But we did see all 3 Ethiopian women drop out of the women's marathon a week ago. Decisive, again, the New York reigning champion. We've been told he's going to be running the New York Marathon again just next month, but let's see how he fares today.
Well, they negotiate this first turn at the southern tip of the course on the Corniche. Nice wide sweeping turn. That plenty of big city marathons have got much tighter turns than that at their different points. The U-turn at the far end of the course, what, about 3.5 kilometers away, because remember, this is a 7-kilometer loop, so almost exactly 3.5 kilometers long. Is a slightly tighter one, but it is a variable point. It's what they call the stretch point on the course, where the organisers were able to move and adjust the length of the entire strip along the Corniche. And that's how they've been able to make sure that from the finish line, around one lap is exactly to the meter, to the centimetre almost, 7 kilometres.
And I think that there is the Swedish athlete Abraha, who we saw right at the beginning, the oldest in the field at 42 years of age, a personal best of 2:14.44. So he now is the sole member of the chase group. We've got to remember not just the weather conditions here, but this marathon started at 1 minute to midnight, which of course is the time when most athletes would be in bed asleep. And the athletes will have had to adjust to that. So, for example, some of them have been sleeping in until what's effectively lunchtime, staying up late, training in the dark in the evening, because you can't expect to live your life normally getting up in the morning, going to sleep in the evening, and then turn up at midnight and be at your best. So all of the athletes will have somehow, in their own way, adjusted to this very late start.
Glorious images of the chasing pack gradually reeling in. Abraha, the former Eritrean, running in the colours of Sweden. He recently won the Sweden versus Finland 10,000 metres. That is a monstrously important two-way athletics meeting, a clash between those Scandinavian nations, which has been going on for decades and decades. So there'll be many back in Sweden cheering him on, of course. Ayala, well, look at that lead. That is monstrous. And he's got the jump in the field. He doesn't exactly kiss the ground, does he? He's not. You can hear him going clump, clump, clump. He's not really one of those athletes who seems to kiss the ground with his feet.
I mean, he does look quite smooth and relaxed. He's obviously, you know, got his own race plan. It's really interesting, actually, when you see athletes attacking races like this. They've obviously got their own plan, and they go out and do it, come what may. Of course, in the 2 race walks in the men's events, we saw Japanese athletes go straight to the front and pretty much stay there the whole way. This is actually a very fast course. The road surface is very good. You know, no corners. It's completely flat. Only 2 U-turns to negotiate. So, in fact, it's actually quite a fast course, although warmer temperatures than you would really want for fast marathons. 73 athletes on the start list, representing 42 countries. And there are full teams, full quotas of 3 athletes from a number of countries: Brazil, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Italy, Japan, Kenya. Of course, they have the extra athlete. South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, USA and Zimbabwe.
Well, Matteo there to the left of picture with the dark glasses. Not quite sure I get the dark glasses when you're running at night. Those floodlights that have been fitted in those huge towers all the way along the Corniche are been specially raised put up for the event. But it's not that bright. It's glorious. You could have a wonderful game of soccer or game of tennis under those floodlights. And I've never seen such a vast expanse of roadway. The footprint of the floodlit area is monstrous.
Tim, I used to wear sunglasses all the time, not so much to keep the glare off my eyes, but to keep the wind and any rain out of my face. So we have seen a few athletes wearing glasses in the last few days. So the first personal refreshment station. The athletes can pretty much put anything they want here, and their team coaches and officials are manning the stations. In such a big group, it's pretty chaotic, and accidents can happen here with athletes swerving across each other, bottles and sponges and so on being thrown at the athletes. So let's hope they all make it through this time, standing up.
Well, the reason that Delis Ayala has built up such a big lead is because he ran his first kilometre in 2:59, and then he's followed that up with a 3:03, and 3 minutes per kilometre is 2:07 pace, 2:07.15. Now look at that gap. This will be really, really interesting to see how long, if they do, it takes them to reel him in. Nobody's gone with him, which I'm a little surprised at. Ayala there, 32 seconds up with almost exactly 10 minutes on the clock. The last time I remember something like this happening was at the Beijing Olympic Games, when Sami Wanjiru, the late Sami Wanjiru, bless him, of Kenya, charged off into the distance from a very, very strong field, of course, and never came back. Ran incredibly quick. I think it was at 2:06, and the heat in Beijing 2008, the humidity as well, was really, really high. And Wanjiru, I think, was in world record form that day before as he ran on to Olympic gold. Now there's an idea of the gap in that shot of the Corniche. It's so big, it's hard to pick out the chasing pack in that shot. I mean, 32 seconds is getting on for about 270 meters, something like that. It's, sorry, about 170 meters.
We've never seen a medal sweep in this event at the World Championships, and I think the main candidates for that, if it were to happen, would be Kenya and Ethiopia. But we do have strong other teams from East Africa, notably Eritrea and also Tanzania, Uganda.
Yeah, with the East Africans, I mean, I tend to bunch them together with that moniker, but of course they're fiercely proud of their nations. Uganda have got a growing reputation in the distance running world. There's Callum Hawkins, perhaps the most favoured of the Europeans, certainly. He ran a 2:08 personal best in London, which was so important. It came, what, some 12 months after his dramatic collapse at the Commonwealth Games in March 2018. And he was well in the lead. He said he felt absolutely fine, and the next minute he was lying on the road. It was, of course, help got to him eventually. but so often, Mara, when you hear about people collapsing from heat stroke like that, you think maybe they've done themselves some irreparable damage. But Callum Hawkins bounced back, and a year later running really well in London last April, which signals him out to me, and he says his preparation has gone really well, as one of the serious non-East African challengers in this race. Ayala there, taking a sharp right across the road towards that drink station. It's almost like he only spotted it with about 40 yards to go, but already feeling the heat. And is he doing just the right thing there, Mara, pouring that cool water over himself?
Absolutely, yeah. The athletes will use the water not just to drink, but also to cool themselves down. And we also saw at the end of that station some sponges. He didn't take the sponges, but water on his head. Absolutely, we've seen that throughout the outdoor races all of this week. A bit cooler today, but still 29 degrees is pretty warm for marathon running. And keeping your body temperature down is really crucial in these circumstances. And in fact, there's been a conference here, an IAAF conference here on road running in these kind of environments here this weekend. And there's actually been a project going on called the Heat Stress Project, where athletes in the endurance events have been asked to volunteer to swallow a very tiny thermometer in a capsule, and that monitors their core temperature and transmits their body temperature back to base. And that data will be used to see how best the athletes can cope with high temperatures. The organisers have really made a big effort to mitigate the effects of the heat and humidity on the athletes.
Well, 4K for our leader Ayala was 12:02, so he is running 3 minutes per kilometre. He's on schedule for something just outside 2 hours 7 at the minute. He would need to get to 5K if he's to maintain that sort of tempo in 15 minutes exactly, obviously. There you can see the rest of the pack a long way down, those names coming through. Shields and Hicks in this one as well.
I think we just caught a glimpse of Ratchik, just 2 or 3 seconds ahead of that big second group. Yassine Ratchik of Italy, the bronze medalist for last year's European Championships, PB of 2:08:05.
Well, we're going to get a chance now to show you just how tough it is to get your water at this speed. Athletes have to practice this in training, and they all should. Athletes of this caliber should, on their longer training runs, when you're fatigued, try and grab the water. Now watch this, 3 times this athlete tries to grab water, misses once, twice. Note slippery bottles. They're, of course, very, very wet because they've come out of a fridge, I think. And it's just, you've got to slow down that little bit, but make sure you get it. It's absolutely critical in any marathon to get the liquids on board, to be drinking long before you feel thirsty, but even more so in these warm conditions, Mara. Even though it's much cooler, you know, 29 degrees centigrade is very warm for marathon running.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these athletes will have practiced carefully. They'll have thought carefully about what they put in their drinks. Most of them, I imagine, will have some sort of carbohydrate sports drinks in there, but because it's very hot, they might have added a bit of salt or electrolytes. Some of them may include caffeine in some of their drinks, but that water station we just saw, that was the general water station, so those bottles were just water, and it's at their personal refreshment stations where they have their own personal drinks. I think there are 2 personal refreshment stations on each lap, so plenty of opportunity to get what they need. But of course there is a limit to how much you can digest per you know, time-wise, per hour, say. Well,
I've got news for you. We have a pull-out already. The race 15 minutes old, and I can tell you that, unfortunately, Stefano Hucce of Tanzania, he's a 2:12 performer, so he's a pretty useful marathon runner, has pulled out of the race. Hucce, wearing 1732, is down and out. He hasn't run a marathon this year, no time for him this year. Ayala has gone through 5K in 15:06. The main pack they're going through in about 15:56, so 50 seconds down. That is a big gap. That's got to be, well, nigh on 280 meters, something like that.
So Ayala on for a finish time of under 2:08 at the moment, so he's really giving it some despite these hot conditions.
And you can see there they passed that 5 kilometer marker, which of course they will pass every 7K. So it'll be the 12K marker, the 19 kilometer marker, the 26K marker, and so on. He is drenched. He looks like he's just had a quick dip in Doha Bay. I suspect he and many others feel like having a dip in Doha Bay. But, you know, if you've got these extra water stations, Mara, and the drinks, and you've been, you know, practicing for these conditions, then these are far more manageable conditions than we expected.
Absolutely. Heat acclimatization is the absolute top priority. So before the Osaka 2007 World Championships, I spent 2 weeks training at home in Tokyo, where it was very hot. It was late August. And I got up very early in the morning initially, and as I acclimatized, started to train a bit later in the day. So if these athletes have spent some time acclimatizing to hot weather, they should be okay. Callum Hawkins famously set up a heat chamber in his shed back at home. So absolute chaos there at the drink station.
Oh my word, it's almost painful to watch. You keep expecting something to go down. There's full bottles being knocked onto the ground and that massive pack running through them. It looks like they got away with it that time. That pack will thin out, but maybe the density of that pack, Mara, suggests that they are going pretty slowly, that pack. I mean, 15:56 at 5K from them. Just checking down the lists. Well, they're on about 2:14 pace.
Yeah, so I mean that's, you know, the slowest winning time in this event, just inside 2:16. That was in Osaka 2007, Luc Kibet. So comparable sort of speed. I mean, don't forget Ayala's taking it out from the front, but don't forget this is very, very early stages. 5K into a 42K race, and I slightly fear for him that he's going to get swallowed up by this pack, but I mustn't speak too soon.
Well, Mara, only 18 minutes on the clock. They're coming up towards 6 kilometres, the early stages. But let's have another look at that drink station and the potential chaos of having the drinks only on one side. I'm not sure why they can't be on two sides of the road, those drink stations. You've got athletes there veering across from the right of picture towards those drink tables and the sponges. They slow right down. That is so different to the way Ayala was able to negotiate that drink station. Grab a bottle nice and relaxed, grab a sponge, do his own thing. That's a significant compromise already for many in that pack. They probably lost 5 seconds to this man, just slowing down there.
Absolutely. We saw athletes swerving across. I saw one of the Bahrain athletes trying to get across, and he wasn't able to. So when you get a big pack going slowly like that, the drink stations are absolute chaos. And it's not just drinks they're after. In the races, outdoor races we've seen this week, we've seen hats full of ice being thrown. We've seen ice neck collars. That seems to be the key piece of heat equipment from the Japanese team. We've seen quite tall hats being filled with ice by the German athletes. We've seen ice packs being held in the athletes' hands. So all manner of things they're trying just to keep cool.
Well, there's that big pack. It's still, what, 5 or 6 men wide in the centre of the pack, maybe more. He's gone through 6 kilometres in 18:11. That's a 3:05 Ayala out in front, the Paraguayan. So his slowest kilometre now. Is that an indication that he's beginning to feel the pace himself? And look at this gap. The pack to the extreme right of picture. We swing left further and further and further in this wonderful shot on this lovely clear night, because so much of the week there's been a sort of haze over the city with the high humidity. And where is Ayala? I can't even see him yet. There he is, centre of picture now, chugging along on his own. And that's got to be 300 metres up the road from the main pack. And let's just give him recognition for this brave run. Some might call it a little bit foolhardy, but Derlis Ramon Ayala Sanchez, I love the name, Derlis Ramon Ayala Sanchez is way out in front on his own. Not quite sure why he's not hugging that left-hand curve. He's not running the shortest line. But anyway, he is a 63:19 half marathon runner. He ran the London Marathon back in April in a notoriously quick course. He's swung right to go to this specialist drink table, as he's at about 7K. Ayala there waiting patiently to get to the P's, because they're in alphabetical order. There he is. It only looks like water to me. I don't think that's a specialist drink.
Yeah, it just looks like water to me.
Well, Callum Hawkins is one man who will be absolutely focused on getting his drinks on board throughout this race. There is Hawkins in the white vest, centre of picture.
It was great to see Hawkins running so well at London in April after his horrible experience at the Commonwealth Games, leading with an enormous margin in the men's marathon there, on the point of becoming Commonwealth champion and then collapsing on the road. He then got up and tried to carry on, collapsed again, and at that point his race was over, and said he didn't remember much after that. after that second fall. So not a good experience at all for Callum Hawkins. But good to see him back here. He's had his heat chamber shed at home in Scotland up to 39 degrees apparently. He says it's a big proper shed, it's not a wee tiny one. So nice to see the Scottish record holder Callum Hawkins doing well there.
Well, I can tell you, just checking the bio of Ayala, that he actually ran 2:10, a national record and a personal best, on the 22nd of September. So 2 weeks ago, Ayala in Buenos Aires finished in 5th place in 2:10.27. It was, of course, a significant personal best. He's already run 3 marathons this year, 20th in London in 2:13, 5th at the Pan Am Games. That was only on the 27th of July. So that was only, what, some 9 weeks or so ago. And then a 2:10 in Buenos Aires 2 weeks back. So he's got to be running on tired legs here. Is this just a chance to grab the spotlight, or indeed are we seeing one of the most extraordinary front-running performances of all time in World Championship history?
Through 7K, Tim, Ayala's split was 3:06, but the chasing pack were on 3:03 or thereabouts. So very gradually closing the gap, but he's still over a minute ahead of the lead group, the second pack, sorry.
Yeah, 21:17 for Ayala, and the main pack 22:18 going through 7K. So he has built up a 1 minute leader. Braha here of Sweden, the 42-year-old that we mentioned earlier. He's only a 2:14 performer. Grabs his bottle, gets that one. And of course, there was so much to be said, Mara, for having that clean run at the tables, not being in the middle of a pack where you're pressurized by the bodies around you.
Absolutely. I mean, normally it's easier to run in a pack because, you know, you can share the load at the front of the group. You could pace-making duties, if you like. You can just switch off, let other people do the work. If it's a windy day, you can let other people cover the wind for you. But you do end up, you know, not being able to see exactly where you're going, and especially at drink stations, you can end up having horrible accidents. I saw in one marathon an Ethiopian woman be pushed from behind at a drink station and went straight into the corner of the table and ended up having to retire from the race. I'd be surprised if we get through this race without seeing any falls at the drink stations.
Well, those are the two unexpected early leaders as we're in, what, 24.5 minutes into this World Championship marathon race. Ayala of Paraguay there, his second marathon in 2 weeks, his 4th of 2019. Looks fresh enough, doesn't he? I guess it's easy to look fresh after half an hour. It's how he'll look after an hour and a half that is far more pertinent.
Yeah, I mean, extraordinary that he's just done that marathon 2 weeks ago. He's obviously recovered reasonably well to be here. All the athletes here have, of course, had to qualify and be selected by their national federations. The qualification standard for Doha was 2:16 for the men, and we are already into the qualification period for the Tokyo Olympic Games next summer. The qualification standard for that event is 2:11:30, and the qualification started in January this year and goes on till the 31st of May next year. And a finish in the top 10 in this race also is a Tokyo qualifier. And of course, the world rankings now also will be used as a qualification route to Tokyo, and the athletes here will earn valuable points for those world rankings. So it looks like the group just stretching out a little now, getting a little bit more strung out. I wonder if they've upped the pace ever so slightly. We'll bring you the latest split as soon as we get it.
Well, 24:22 for Ayala at 8 kilometres. That was a 3:05, so he seems to be knocking out 3:05s regularly now. And the pack 25:25, so actually he's taken another couple of seconds out of the pack. Very, very gradually he is moving away. And in fact, Decisive leading the main pack, that was a Braha. He was 1 minute and 3 seconds ahead of the main pack, is 1 minute and 13 seconds down on Ayala. So he must be just about exactly 400 meters ahead of the main pack now. That means we have to remember, if you know your marathon running, you know that means just about diddly, nothing, zero when there's so many kilometers to run. He's run 8K, he's got 34 to go. And I suspect there's some trials and tribulations for the 29-year-old Decisive Ayala to come. There's Abraha in second place. What do you think's going through his mind at the moment, Maros? We see this chasing group where there seems to be a bit of indecision, and of course it's the Eritrean who's leading, Decisive, the former world record holder in the marathon, who's leading the pack and has decided, I think, enough is enough, and is pushing on a little bit here. But what would be going through the mind of one of those two, each of those two guys out in front?
It's really interesting, actually, because the danger in a really hot championship race is that the race sets off very slowly, and if you go with that, what effectively happens is it becomes a half marathon race or a 15-kilometer race. It's not a marathon race because the early stages are so easy. This is exactly what happened in the Beijing Olympics when I was competing. We went through 15K very easy. It was well within the capacities of everybody there. So it really kind of became a half marathon race or even a 10K race, because it wasn't until the last 10K when we were really, really suffering. So this slow start for the big group, behind these two individuals on their own, they're starting nice and steady, and that means that the slightly slower runners, the runners with slightly slower PBs, will be in the mix there.
So 9K for Ayala in 27:31. That 9th kilometre for him, though, was 3:09, his slowest by several seconds. So just wondering, as the 10K mark, the 6-mile mark in effect approaches for him, whether or not he is beginning to feel it a little bit. The pack, mind you, running, what, 3:02. Abraha ran at 3:02. The transferee from Eritrea here, Abraha, acting almost as a target for the pack, who are being led on, who are being dragged along the road, perhaps to a more respectable tempo by Decisive.
And we saw a medal won by Sweden just yesterday in the men's 20K walk by Percy Karlström. So I wonder if Abraha was inspired by that. And at the head of that group is Decisive, the 5-time half marathon champion running for Eritrea. He's also won the World Cross Country Championships back in, I believe it was 2007. Not quite got the hang properly of the marathon yet, but he's joined a new coaching setup recently and certainly has the potential. I mean, 5-time champion is pretty phenomenal.
So Decisive and Duo of China. A great name. The Chinese Duo Buji is a 2:10 performer up towards the front. Well, as we have almost half an hour on the clock, for those of you who have joined us in the last few minutes, let's have a quick look at the way this marathon got underway here on the Corniche about 30 minutes ago. They're all wearing timing chips, of course, but marathon runners will press their own stopwatches. It's almost like preordained, and away they go, heading south. A lap and a half ago now. It's a 7-kilometre loop that they negotiate. 6 laps to go is what they saw when they came through the start line, the finish line rather, because the first 195 meters leads them through to the finish line. The Ethiopian trio expected to really do something here. They are the 3 quickest in the field, but the Ethiopians have a habit of perhaps under-delivering. I don't think it's unfair to say that. At major championships, the federation tend to just select the fastest 3 athletes, and that isn't necessarily the way to go.
Yeah, bizarrely, despite their strength, Ethiopia have only won this event once. That was Abera back in 2001 in Edmonton.
Well, the 10K split there, 30:41. Our computers actually say 30:40. We're not going to argue over 1 second. 3:09 again, the split there for Ayala. And unless your name is Kawauchi, the very concept of running a great marathon 2 weeks after your last 42-kilometer effort is almost absurd to contemplate. But Ayala 30:40, let's see what the gap is. Are they closing? Are they beginning to reel him in as yet? Abraha there. Oh my word. Who is that charging across like a lightning?
That was Jari of Zimbabwe, I think. So not much planning ahead going on as the athletes approach the drink stations here. I think it's a measure of how hot they're getting already, that they're obviously desperate to get to their drinks. Often in cooler races, you sometimes see athletes just skipping the drink stops. You know, they're not that bothered, but in this race, everybody really making an effort to get them. And then the bottles discarded on the ground, easy to trip over. So drinks in such a crowded race, lots of scope for accidents to happen.
Well, the gap is 1 minute at 10 kilometres. 32 kilometres to go. That's an awful long way. Big distance. You know the old adage that a marathon halfway point is at about 20 miles, call it for argument's sake 30 kilometres, 32 kilometres. In other words, you have to get that first hour and a half of running out of the way. How did you approach that, Mara? Did you always think, you know, I've got to get halfway feeling really comfortable? And can you remember a marathon where, for example, you didn't feel great at halfway and it did indeed turn out to be a really bad experience?
Yeah, so when I ran the New York Marathon in 2010, I went into that race with a hamstring injury. And
was that a good idea?
Well, I was able to run and train. It didn't stop me running, but it was difficult, if I'm honest. And I was a bit lacking fitness. I thought I was in better shape than I was, and it was a struggle. But let's remember that when you set off in the first half of a marathon, particularly in conditions like this, you're running considerably slower than your top speed, so it can feel really easy. But in the first half, you really need to conserve your energy, not do anything flashy, just keep your energy, tick off those early kilometres with as minimal effort as possible, because the race definitely, you know, won't get going until into the second half. And as you said, even past 20 miles or 30 kilometres, that's when the real racing begins. But of course, marathons can be won and lost well before the finish. We've seen that a lot in the past. Jeffrey Karui, the defending champion, his margin of victory from London 2017 was the second biggest ever at 1 minute and 22 seconds. So the other athletes really need to be aware of breaks being made. But at 10K, I think it's still very early days. Of course, the Paraguayan out in front, if he can keep that going, you know, the chasing group will have lost touch with him. But through 10K, he was on pace for about 2 hours 10 finishing time. He started off at sub 2:08, so he has slowed down slightly. Well,
I can tell you that he's gone through 11K in 33:52, Mr. Ayala here. And that 11th kilometre, the writing beginning to get clearer and clearer on the wall, 3:12. So he's gone from 3:05 clockings to, well, below that actually, the early kilometres, then 3:05s, then a couple of 3:09s, and now at 3:12. He is slowing. Many in that pack, of course, are just cruising along. Kawauchi, by the way, was 16 seconds down on the pack at that 10-kilometre mark. So he is struggling already in what is his 4th marathon of the year. And we can have a look at the gap here. Now, you can see, as they come towards this northern end of the course, we're looking southwards. You can see Ayala there, bottom right of picture, with that vehicle accompanying him, and a motorbike, of course, with our camera on it. But top left of picture, there's the pack just coming into view. So it's a couple 100 metres now, maybe a little bit more. But it seems inevitable. Not quite sure what's going through his mind. Maybe hoping upon hope that his legs would perform a miracle and draw him clear of this World Championship field with all its talent for the full 42 kilometres.
And Abraha of Sweden has been swallowed up by that group, led now by Kiprotich of Uganda, the 2012 Olympic champion from the London Games. So Stephen Kiprotich looking very relaxed and comfortable at the moment. Of course, also the 2013 Moscow world champion in very hot conditions.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it, to see one of the big names moving to the fore there. They negotiate that little chicane up towards the northern end of the circuit. By the way, Ayala went through in 33:52 at 11K. The pack in 34:56. So they're still well over a minute behind him. Abraham of Switzerland there to the left of picture with the biggest headband I've ever seen. I think it is clearly something I've not seen before, Mara, but must have ice in it or a frozen gel in it to try and keep the head cool. I'm wondering about the application of the rules more and more in marathons when I watch them these days, because of course this trend to be grabbing what is effectively different bits of equipment during the race was started off in Rio by Alberto Salazar with Galen Rupp grabbing those cooled hats at every 5K drink station. There was a hat with an elastic band holding it to his drinks bottle. They effectively became not just drink stations but equipment stations, and I've never seen that before, what Abraham the Swiss is wearing. I don't know if you have, but
I think he's definitely got ice in there. I think they're ice packs. We've seen the Japanese athletes wearing a similar thing around their necks, and I'm pretty sure they're packs of ice in there to try and keep cool. We were seeing all manner of things being thrown at the athletes in the walks races. We saw stockings full of ice, we saw hats full of ice, bags of ice, towels with ice in, water bottles, sponges, all manner of things. If you read the rules on the personal refreshment station simply say the athletes can provide their own refreshments. It doesn't say only drinks or you're not allowed hats or towels. It just says your personal refreshments. So within reason, the athletes can put whatever they want there. However, having said that, there is also another rule which prevents athletes from receiving assistance. So they're not allowed to receive, any kind of help. Obviously, getting a lift is going to be blatant cheating. They're not allowed any kind of assistance from the side of the course. And that includes receiving drinks outside the personal drink station. So they're not allowed to receive drinks from people just standing on the course. And that's Johan Diniz, the 50K walk world record holder. He twice received a drink back in, I believe it was the London Olympics, and was nearly disqualified by the referee. So the race referee will be watching and ensuring that none of the athletes receive anything outside the drink station. So another casualty there.
That's Mert Gemalagese of Turkey, former Ethiopian, running in their colours. He's a 2:11 performer, and he's had enough with, some 37 minutes on the clock. Gemalagese, this was just a couple of minutes ago as he decided enough is enough. Can't be enjoying himself too much out there. 38.5 minutes on the clock now. And there are the splits. He's 37.02. The pack has gone through in 37.10. So he is 68 seconds in the lead. Bizarrely, while he is slowing, the pack is slowing as well. He went through 11K with a 3:12 split. He's gone through 12K with a 3:10 split. His last 4Ks, therefore, have gone 3:09, 3:09, 3:12, 3:10. He's just gradually slowing, but the pack don't seem to be closing. And I suppose he's so far ahead, Mara. He's got that, virtually 400-metre gap on them. Let's call it 350-metre gap. And they can't really see him. I mean, while this is the sight lines are generally pretty good here, the constant curve of the course probably allows you to see about 300 metres ahead. He's just out of sight round the bend all the time.
I wouldn't rule out the possibility that some of these athletes don't even know he's ahead. At the 2008 Beijing Olympics, the eventual silver medalist, Catherine Ndereba, thought she was leading the race and then came into the stadium, and there she saw Tomescu Dieter ahead of her. She didn't see Tomescu leave the front of the pack at 15K, and she thought she was about to win. So some of these athletes, especially if they're the back of the group, they may not have seen Ayala set off.
Except every 3.5K, he goes past them about 20 yards away.
Of course, that's true, yeah.
So 20 metres away. Well, no, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will spot him. But certainly, anybody with their wits about them should be aware of what's happened. Most of them surely would have seen him disappearing up the road over those first few kilometres. He built up a big lead over the first 10 minutes or so. So anybody who's in that pack who thinks they're in the lead pack and think they're chasing this Ugandan vest at the moment, well, they've got nobody to blame but themselves. And they will see Ayala every... how long does 7K take? 20 minutes? They'll see Ayala every 10 minutes or so at each end of the course, every 10 or 11 minutes at each end of the course. There's umpteen opportunities to see him.
Yeah, I mean, if they've been paying attention, they'll have spotted him going off. But, when you're focusing on yourself and just trying to, stay in the zone, you can occasionally miss things like this. So there's Arikan, the 2 times European 10,000 metre champion, now running for Turkey. And we've just heard, Tim, that the weather situation actually has improved. At 11:30 p.m. it was 29.09 degrees Celsius. And at midnight, it's now 40 minutes past midnight, it was 29.04 degrees Celsius. So the temperature has been dropping, and the humidity also has dropped from 48.6 to 46.9%. So weather conditions improving.
Jeffrey Kirui, by the way, the defending champion, right in the middle of that pack. He's cruising along, and this is a huge pack. I mean, what? It's got to be 35 strong. I haven't had a chance to count it man for man, but my estimate is it's just north of 30 people in this pack. Big pack. Ari Khan there, of course, a former Kenyan. Loyangata there, one of that Kenyan trio. Lonyangata, I should say, was third in Paris this year in 2:07. And his wife, incidentally, won the women's race in Paris back in April. It was quite a double for the family. Nice day, nice earning day as well. There's Kirui just behind Rainolo. And Kirui, who has a very compact style. Big shoulders, aren't they, for a marathoner? He's not got that long linear shape we associate with so many of the East Africans. You can see the Bahraini there, Surai.
Yeah, if you look at Korea behind him, he's very petite. I mean, marathon runners typically are small and compact, but you can see Lonyangata's quite tall. So, I mean, very lean and light is the norm for the marathon.
By the way, we saw Benson Surai very briefly, a former Kenyan, running the colours of Bahrain. He is the quickest 1,500-metre runner in the field. Why do I know that? Because beside his name in my notes, it says he ran 3:31 in 2012. That's useful finishing speed for a marathon. For a marathon. I'm not sure how necessary it would be, but he has run 3:31 back in 2012. He's a 1:45 800-metre runner, and yet, to his credit, he's a 2:07 performer last year, 2:08 this year. Here's Mr. Ayala. So what a great run he is having. I think it's time we gave him fair credit. He's bouncing along with a lead of over 1 minute. He's gone through 14 kilometres in 43:23. And that means his last kilometre was a 3:12. So he is certainly slowing. He's outside 3:10 for each kilometre. That's 2:15 pace, 3:12. But remember, his first 5K was 15:06. Then he got to 10K in 30:41, which means his second 5K was 15:35. So huge differential between his opening 5K and his second 5K. Clearly that opening 5K just wanted to get a gap on the field. This is running to a plan. This isn't just hot-headedness. He must have discussed this surely with his coach, perhaps with the team management, maybe with teammates.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, he'll have been able to see how the races earlier in the week unfolded, how the athletes coped with the hot weather. And all respect to him, he came here with a race plan and he's executing it. Interesting shot there to see a lot of athletes wearing pink shoes. Of course, the latest thing in shoes in endurance running is shoes with carbon plates in them. Very popular now.
Well, a pack, 44:29. They are still 66 seconds behind him. Callum Hawkins, left a picture there, has got his personal drink. Get plenty on board. This is something these athletes practice in training, not just grabbing drinks from tables at speed, and particularly when you're fatigued, it becomes all the harder. But drinking plenty of liquid when you're out running is not easy. I can remember chatting to the great Steve Jones, former world record holder, the Welshman, at the marathon distance back in the 1980s, and Steve said he even practiced going to the bathroom during a run. Dare I say a number one. But he practiced it because, yes, these bodily functions have to continue sometimes when you're in a race. And you see athletes sometimes in all sorts of trouble, but wanting to carry on running. And if they can, they very often do.
There is a limit to how much you can take on board and safely digest in a race like this. And the athletes will have measured that and practiced it. And also how much you sweat varies from person to person. So I'm sure these athletes will have measured whether they're a very sweaty sweater, if I can put it that way. You can weigh yourself before and after a run and then calculate how many litres you sweat per hour and then work out how you're going to replace that fluid. Of course, you don't need to be fully hydrated on the finish line. You want to be fully hydrated at the start. But by the finish, you can afford to be you know, a fair bit dehydrated, because your body weight and any fluid is weight that you have to carry.
So we understand Callum Hawkins has lost his timing chip. Now, this happened to a German athlete in the 20 kilometres walk last night, I believe, Mara. I'm not quite sure why those chips are working loose or failing to function. I wonder if, actually, and it doesn't sound like a plausible reason because they get plenty of water over in races in the rain and so on, but I just wonder whether or not a little bit of that water, these huge quantities of water these athletes are pouring over themselves, is getting into the works, quite literally.
Yep, the athletes put the transponders on their shoes. So in the 20k walk yesterday, partway through the race, we saw no mention of the German athlete Linker, and then he eventually finished fourth, and it turned out that there was a problem with his timing chip. So Hawkins at the moment not appearing on our screens, which rely on the chip timing. But if we can find out some splits for him, we will bring you them.
Well, hopefully he's going to be alongside somebody who has got a timing chip on their shoe that works for most of the time. Clearly we can spot Callum Hawkins very easily in those British colours. Ayala here has gone through 15k in 46.34. 46.34, as you can see. The pack have yet to go through 15k. They'll go through it any second now. But 46.34, Mara, at 15k has him on schedule, I reckon, for about 2:11, 2:12.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, 3:11 was his last split, just around that level. So he's been pretty consistent. And whether we'll see him struggle a bit later on, we don't know yet. But he's really giving it some and keeping it going so far.
So Lonyan-Gata then, beginning to stride out. Lovely relaxed arms he's got. 47.36 for him at 15k, so he's 62 seconds back. So that might suggest this lovely languid stride of one of the Kenyan squad is actually beginning to eat into the lead of Ayala. You can see the names going through and their positions in that big pack. This is still a pack we're talking about. These are athletes who are very much there. Mutai, Simbu, Surai of Bahrain, Mateo of Spain, Epperson of the USA, one of that USA squad. And that pack, remember, on around 47.36, 47.37. So once you get down to the 40s here, you see people who are beginning to peel off the back of this pack. Perhaps at the top of this picture, we're seeing athletes who are 5 seconds down on Lonyan-Gata there, who negotiates this curve. Around they go. Just beginning attritionally to thin out a little bit, isn't it? That's a Norwegian vest at the back of that pack. If that is the case, then that would be Gebret Sadik. Well done, Nagash Gebret Sadik, the only Norwegian competitor here, the 32-year-old. He's a 209 man last year. Pretty useful. Asylum seeker from Eritrea, granted Norwegian citizenship back in 2017. Well, Ayala, 102 ahead at the moment. The second group have got him in sight now. This is a long, straight stretch at this stage, but the vast majority of the, it's 3.5 kilometres, the circuit, isn't it? The curve around the bay. The vast majority of it, Mara, they don't have him in sight.
That's right, yeah, they might get glances of him as he passes the other way at the same part of the curve. But this is really interesting because in a course where you're going through buildings and lots of turns and so on, a leader can easily get out of sight, and that's a big mental advantage because the lead group don't know how far they are ahead. Ayala has a big lead here. They'll catch glances of him on the other side, but once he's out of sight, out of sight, out of mind, I think is a useful phrase to use in this situation. So Hawkins there, the lonely figure amongst huge group of East Africans. The East Africans have really dominated this race in recent years. If we go back to 2007, Victor Rothlin of Switzerland was the bronze medalist then. And since then, all the medalists have been East Africans or East African-born athletes. The silver medalist in 2007, just ahead of Rothlin, was Mubarak Shami, Kenyan-born Qatari athlete. And before Ruthlin, we mentioned before, Tsuyoshi Ogata of Japan won bronze in 2005. And in 2003, Julio Rey of Spain, the silver, and Stefano Baldini of Italy, the bronze. But in more recent times, the East Africans have been utterly dominant. But Callum Hawkins proved last time in London, finishing in 4th, that he's willing to really take it to the Africans and be up there. Really interesting, because now, of course, the standard of men's marathon running, you know, getting so fast. We just saw Kenenisa Bekele come within 2 seconds of the world record just a week ago in Berlin. Kipchoge, the world record holder, attempting a sub-2 hour marathon in just over a week's time.
Well, it's next Saturday, isn't it? It's a week today, actually, that he's supposed to be attempting that in Vienna. Now, the hat gets thrown aside there by Braha, the 42-year-old Swede. I can tell you that the pack now is within a minute. It's less than a minute, the gap from Hawkins through to Ayala. That was 56 seconds, but Braha here is, what, 4 or 5 seconds ahead of them. So actually, Braha is about 50 seconds down on Ayala. Callum Hawkins's chip would appear to be working again. It's appearing on our computers. He went through 16K in 50:42. So, is Ayala being caught or is he not? I know that in Paraguay there'll be many of the running community watching this with their hearts in their mouths, cheering him on. And the Kenyans, of course, so proud, so confident that the race will go their way. He's a shy retiring lad, the one in the middle. Well, he used to be until he got into running. Ayala locked into his own little pattern of thought. He stayed there much longer than I expected, Murray. You know, he's managed to build up that lead pretty quickly, and the pack remaining relatively unconcerned at the moment. Braha looking strong, not the aesthetically the most pleasing looking of runners in that Swedish yellow vest. He has a little glance over his shoulder there as the pack, again, it looks like chaos, but the foreshortening effect of the camera shot probably making it look worse than it is at that drink station. Tadesse to the extreme left of picture, grabbing a bottle off one of the athletes, saying, "Can I borrow your bottle? I missed mine. Thank you very much."
Of course, Tim, a lot of these athletes have personal bests. They're capable of running way quicker than the pace they're going at the moment. So even if Ayala is a minute or more ahead, you know, they could, if they need to in the last 10K, 12K, they can really speed up as long as they've got the heat under control, the body heat. And once they're running considerably faster per kilometre than Ayala, they can close that gap pretty quickly. Ayala there just glancing at his watch, just wondering if he's perhaps starting to suffer. He's had a lonely journey so far, but still going strong through 17K. The last split 3:13.
Yeah, but his gap back to Braha has been cut to, what, some 49 seconds now. Braha here, that strange arm carriage, why that right hand comes up so high. Braha is the man who's getting closest to Ayala. There is the leader. Now, this wonderful shot which we're getting from a drone above Doha Bay will give us some idea as we sweep back along the Corniche to the pack. 49 seconds to Braha, 58 seconds to the pack, who are clearly just about 9 or 10 seconds behind that Swedish vest. Arikan, former Kenya, running for Turkey, is in that pack, which is still, I don't know, got to be about 30 strong. It will start thinning out, although I suspect we'll not see the main protagonists really make their big moves until we're into the final quarter, Mara. Do you think that, or do you think somebody will lose patience in this third quarter? That we're nearly in the third quarter and not very far from halfway. Of course, we're still in the second quarter. I'm getting ahead of myself. I think
that after halfway they'll make a move. I mean, they're still going at the same speed as Ayala. The main pack had the last split of 3:13. I don't know. I mean, it's a funny race. You know, it's still 29 degrees. Let's not forget it's roastingly hot out there. We're just starting to get a little bit spread out now.
They are, aren't they? Yes, the chase is on. That's Decisive beginning to push on.
Of course, what can happen in this situation is everyone just goes along at a nice steady pace. And it takes somebody to go to the front and pick the speed up. Otherwise, the group can just sort of dawdle along and not much happens. And in the Osaka 2007 World Championships, that was going on in just after halfway. And I went to the front at 29k because I knew I didn't have the finish that some of the other athletes had over, let's say, 2, 3, 4 kilometers. So I thought, right, I have to make my move now. But I just put too much into that surge at 29k. And then was really suffering at around 34, 35, 36k. And having dropped most of the lead group, there were 9 of us altogether, having dropped them, they then caught me up and I finished 9th. But this is what marathon running is all about. It's tactics. You know, when do you put in a surge? Who do you allow to go to let go ahead of you? You know, when do you put in your surge? How fast do you go? And a lot of these athletes will be really fantastic tacticians, but let's not forget that the city races, they're often done in very good conditions, so races in places like London, Chicago, Berlin, Boston, Valencia. They're often done in very cool conditions and they're often set up for fast times. And many of them will have pacemakers, so completely different scenario of racing to what's happening here.
Well, the slowest ever World Championship marathon was in 2011, I think it was. It was in 2007 in 2007 in Osaka when Luke Kibet took gold for Kenya, and his halves were 68.30 and 67.29 for his eventual winning time of 2:15.59. And just looking at the pack as they've gone through 16 kilometers, for example, 49.46. Well, we'll call it 15 kilometers, 46.34. The pack are on about 2:12 tempo. Conditions quite a bit kinder here than in Osaka 12 years ago. But Ayala holding his form pretty well, considering, while the chase is on. He's gone through 18 kilometers in 56.12, and his lead has been cut to 43 seconds.
So he had just about a minute on the chasers previously, but that lead is now down to 47 seconds. And Decisive looks like he's quick glance behind. He wants to know how far behind he's left that pack. So Decisive now surging and trying to get away from that group and chase down Ayala and Abraha ahead of him.
Well, Abraha 56.55. The pack actually a further 4 seconds back on that. So the pack are some 43 seconds down. Yes, Decisive chasing hard, and he looks good actually, doesn't he? He looks comfortable. He is, we must remember, Decisive, an astonishing physical specimen. You look at his lifetime best, and he is one of the great performers on road and track. 5 times world half marathon champion. He's never really got it right at the marathon, but his track personal best, listen to this, 12.59 for 5,000, 26.37 for 10,000, and 58.23, of course, that half marathon best, which lasted for so many years. There's his marathon career, 2:12 and then a 2:10, then back to 2:12 in 2017, and then a 2:08 in 2018. But Mara, you know, a guy who's run 58 minutes for the half, you'd expect him to be down there doing the 2:03s, 2:04s.
Absolutely, but Decisive's last split was 2:50, I believe. So he's really put the hammer down and trying to get away from that group. We saw him glancing behind, just checking how far he was behind. You see, this kind of race is perfectly playing into an athlete like Decisive's hands, because they've effectively gone nice and steady for coming up to half of the race. And Decisive is the 5-time world half marathon champion. This is now a half marathon race. So if Decisive's been going easy enough in this first half, he's going to have a lot left and be in a really great position. He is getting on a little bit. 37 years of age now, and also former world cross-country champion.
This is thinning out. Look at this, the way they come to this drink station. No longer that massive pack that was slightly chaotic. Hawkins there, back in the middle of that pack. He's got to be, what, in about 20th? Certainly in the 20s, I would say. He's perhaps going through a bad patch here, the Briton. I'm not sure how he's gone from being out in front of the main pack to buried further back. Maybe he's had to have a toilet break. You can see top of picture there was a blue Portaloo. Here is Hawkins, and there you can see the pack, who are 25 seconds back from Ayala now. They're reeling him in very quickly because this big acceleration initiated to begin with by Abraha of Sweden, and then Tadesse has continued the chase. There they are in the background. It looks like a cycling pack beginning to close him in with frightening speed. Tadesse is closing.
So, Tim, the splits from the chase group were in around 250, 252, 254 for that last kilometre, and that is well inside 205 pace. So a big injection of pace, and that explains why it's got so strung out. Against
Ayala's 3:15, that was his slowest kilometre, the 19th kilometre. So they've taken 25 seconds out of him in the space of 1 kilometre. That is astonishing. 2.5 laps of the track, 25 seconds that they have roared up towards him. And I'm afraid his day is more or less done. It's been impressive. I'd have loved to see him lead through to the half marathon, but I think he's going to be caught before then. He's coming up towards 20 kilometres. He's going to be passing 20 kilometres in something like 62 minutes. Yeah, it's just come through 62:38 at 20k. And if we extrapolate from that, his likely finishing time, he's on about 2:12 tempo, so he'll be around halfway in about 66 minutes, but I think he'll be passed before that, I'm afraid.
So the lead group there just behind Ayala, on the point of catching him, and that's going to be tricky for Ayala, but if he can just keep going and hang in there, find somebody to run with, you know, he might be able to keep a good pace going in the second half.
But he'd have to, they're moving at 250, 255 tempo. He's moving at 3:11, 3:15 tempo. His last kilometre actually 3:11. I don't know if he's had a little glance around and recognised that he is being caught, but he is going to have to make a massive acceleration. What I do wonder, though, Mara, is whether or not he'd have been better off with this much good form in those legs, which is still amazing considering he ran a marathon 2 weeks ago. Would he have been better off hanging back in the pack, running the race with everybody else, moving through, and maybe, just maybe, has the potential to, in the final shake-up, come out in the top 10 or the top 12. You know, I suspect he will get passed now and swallowed up by many athletes. He might not even finish the race, which would be very sad because he's had a great go. But I don't think he's maximised his ability here today.
Possibly. I mean, you said he ran that 2:10 and he set off at about 2:78 pace. So, you know, if he's improving rapidly, maybe he can go quicker than 2:10. And he just decided, right, I'm going to run as fast as I can from start to finish. That's 2:08 pace. So Ayala now being caught. This is such a difficult moment in a marathon when you get caught. You've got to, you know, you've really got to keep yourself positive and not let it get to you. I've been there. I really feel for him.
Well, let's look at this pack that are swallowing him up. He's trying to tuck in with them. And Mokoka there, Stephen Mokoka, has that lovely rolling style. I've seen him run the Great South Run and the half marathon in the UK, some of the big road races. Kipruto is there. So let's have a look. There's Tadesse, former world half marathon record holder. Decisive is there for Ethiopia. Decisive, of course, a fabulous racer. So experienced, the Boston Marathon champion twice. Back in 2013, he won it, the year of the bombing. He dedicated his medal to the people of the city. He won again 2 years later. He's the reigning New York champion. Decisive will put up a good account of himself here. Kirui, the defending champion, is there. Mokoka of South Africa, better known as a half marathon runner. Mokoka. Kipruto is there as well, one of that Kenyan trio. Amos Kipruto running his 8th marathon. He ran 2 marathons at 2:06 last year, 3rd in Tokyo and 2nd in Berlin. He had the ignominy of finishing in 2nd place, albeit a distant 2nd place, to the world record of Eliud Kipchoge in Berlin in September last year, just over a year back. There is Ayala. Well, he's had his moment in the sun.
Absolutely, but Ayala, Paraguayan record holder from 5,000 metres all the way up to the marathon, 10k on the road and the track, 20k half marathon. So really gave it his all, and let's hope he can keep a good pace going to the finish. At the personal refreshment station just a moment ago, we saw Tadesse pull something off the side of his bottle. I think it was a gel or an ice pack. He doesn't seem to have it in his hand right now. So Tadesse keeping hold of his drink for a while and just taking his time with his hydration there. So Decisive not letting Tadesse get away. Decisive is on the start line of the New York Marathon next month.
The half marathon split for Tadesse, 65.56. 65.56 for Tadesse, and Ayala is down and out. Well, it was clearly a gesture of defiance to lead for as long as he could. That's a sad sight, but oh so predictable. I know many, many running experts will be watching the screen and just shaking their heads and saying, of course he's been passed, of course he's dropped out. Quite why he did that, I don't know. He must have known it was a full marathon, not a half. So it was both brave and foolhardy. And now we have a World Championship marathon race in earnest. And it is beautifully poised. Tadesse, the man who, after one marathon and another, has not been able to quite get it right. I say that with inverted commas because, of course, he has a best, the Eritrean, of 2 hours, 8 minutes, 46 seconds. That was last year. But, you know, he dropped out of his debut in London all of 10 years ago. He was 7th in London the following year, 12th in London 2012, dropped out of Chicago, dropped out of Boston in 2015. He's a man who has a checkered history at best at the marathon distance. Here is the reigning champion Kirui, his teammate Kipruto, who's a little quicker than him, and Geremute there to the right of picture looks very comfortable as well. Not really sweating up, Geremute.
Geremute had a fantastic race in London in April this year, breaking the Ethiopian record, and he was second on the all-time list behind world record holder Eliud Kipchoge, but he's just been bumped down to 4th following last weekend's Berlin Marathon, bumped down by Bekele with that incredible 2:01:41, just missing the world record, and Berhanu Legesse, who finished second in Berlin.
Well, bad news, I'm afraid, if you're a Tanzania supporter. The youngest man in the race, Agostino Paulo Sule, has dropped out. He's just 21 years old. He is a 2:07 performer at his best, only 2:12 this year, but Sule is gone for Tanzania, so they are beginning to feel the tempo at different points in the pack, having to work. He broke the long-standing 2:08 mark of Juma Ikanga, set back in 1989, and Samson Ramadani in 2003 when he ran that 2:07:46 national record. Sule, but I'm afraid his bolt is shot. Tadesse doing the work, and he's gone very early. Are you a little surprised, Mara, that Tadesse has gone out in front like this? I'd have thought he'd be one of the last people with his checkered past at the marathon, his renowned speed, and it still must be pretty substantial at the age of 37, his renowned speed, that he is pushing the pace here and trying to break so many marathon runners who have run 4-5 minutes quicker than him.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, you don't want to go too soon and waste your energy, but at the same time, if you haven't got a great finish, you don't want to spend too much of the race dawdling along at a pace where you could be going a lot quicker. And Tadesse, he's the 5-time world half marathon champion, so he's got speed over a long period of time. So I think where he's gone here is probably good for him. You know, the first 18 kilometres probably pretty steady, pretty comfortable for him. He's now in his element, although he keeps glancing behind, which I have to say is not a great sign.
Well, I'll tell you what, he's just trying to see what sort of damage he's doing, because listen to this. His last kilometre, getting to 22 kilometres in 68:31, was a 2:35. I mean, he's virtually sprinting mid-race. That's middle distance tempo. Decisive at 2:35 in his wake. Makoka, the South African, at 2:34 in his wake. Geremute at 2:37. He's beginning to feel the pace. Amos Kipruto, 2:37. Jeffrey Kirui, the defending champion, and Fine Fettel, 2:38 from him as well. It was a short split, I suppose, from 21.1 to 22 kilometres, but still under 3 minutes pace, I think.
So Tadesse really putting the others under pressure, and you can see how they're strung out, which means, you know, they're struggling to hang on to him. If they were taking it nice and easy, they'd all be much more bunched up. So Tadesse really trying to do some damage now. Yeah,
that 22nd kilometre, just to correct things, was a 2:52. So still very fast for the front pack. As Tadesse has another little glance there to see what sort of damage he's done. And the signs are good for him because he can see that he's got 4 men who have been dragged away. At the 23-kilometre point, his split 71.29. And we'll give you as quickly as we can some splits that indicate just how viciously he has accelerated. This 5K, for example, from 20 to 25K is going to be mighty impressive. If you want to mark your cards, those of you sitting there with your little pads, his time at 20K, Tadesse, if I can pull it up, which I will, was around 62.38, give or take a second. So what's that through to 25K? There's Kirui.
So Kirui, the defending champion, if he or Kiprotich could win this race today, they will join multiple gold medalists, Abel Anton of Spain, Jaoud Garib of Morocco and Abel Kirui of Kenya, who've each won 2 apiece already.
Well, the last 2 kilometres by the leader Tadesse have been 2:52 and 2:58, 23 kilometres and 71.29. But he's still got plenty of company. 4 men there: Decisive of Ethiopia, Makoka of South Africa, Geremu of Ethiopia, and Emos Kipruto of Kenya. And the defending champion, Jeffrey Kirui, at 23 kilometres, 9 seconds back. He's struggling. He's looked fine until just the last few minutes. He's beginning to wilt under the ferocity of this assault from that light blue vested Zosne Tadesse. Makoka staying to the right-hand side of the road and actually has the lead now. Not quite sure why, but Tadesse was right over the left-hand side of the road, running the outside of the curb. It's like choosing to run in lane 2 on a track around the bends instead of in lane 1. And then he seemed to realise the error of his ways, and he's moved over behind Makoka. This looks good from Makoka. He's got a lovely bouncy style, and it's a very familiar style because we've seen him race a lot in the UK. But I sometimes wonder if that is not the ideal style for a marathon.
He looks a bit like a track runner, I think. Very, very bouncy. Looks like he's quite rangy, but he does look very comfortable. Doesn't look like he's suffering too much. Normally in marathon races, a blue line is painted on the road, which shows the shortest way. And we've been told that in this case, a blue line wasn't painted on the road throughout because it would confuse the race walkers who have also used this course. But it's entirely up to the athletes. You know, they can judge where the shortest course is for themselves. It's not difficult, and any deviation from that course is going to be extra distance.
Well, this quintet, each of them seeming to get their personal bottles without any trouble. Here's a chasing pack. Callum Hawkins there in that group of 6. There's Kirui on his own, isolated. Difficult period this for him. Does he run on hard here and hope those ahead of him will begin to peel away from what is admittedly almost an unrealistically vicious tempo that Tadesse is laying down. The 24th kilometre was at 2:59, so they've gone 2:52, 2:58 and 2:59, I think.
It's interesting, Tim, that Kirui was a little bit off that first group. He was some 9 or 10 seconds off, because sometimes spurts which go too fast, and Makoka there having a nice chat to the chap running next to him, looks very relaxed, doesn't he? Sometimes if a surge is too fast, especially this, you know, relatively still quite early, it can do too much damage. And then you see those who've gone with it suffering in the latter stages, and those who've just taken it a little bit more steady catching them up. So I just wonder if Kirui is letting them do the fast and furious surges, just keeping them in touch about 9-10 seconds ahead and just biding his time.
Well, I'd be more ready to believe that if this pack didn't include athletes of the caliber of Decisive, of Kipruto, and Makoka, for that matter. Musobo of Uganda. Well, Uganda, of course, had a gold medal at these games in the women's 800 metres. And Fred Musobo, world mountain running champion 4 years ago, was a bronze medalist in 2017 in the world mountain running. It's only his 4th marathon, And his last race in when he was second in the Rio Half Marathon on the 18th of August, I suspect it was warm and humid down there, so that wasn't bad preparation. He ran 63.14, but he's a 2:06 performer. Back in April, he was third in Daegu in 2:06.56. That is his lifetime best, so he is strong, and he looks strong too, doesn't he? Looks pretty comfortable. He's isolated at the moment ahead of that group that's got Hawkins in it. Only 23 years old, Musoba, so we'll monitor his pace. I wonder if he's trying to close on that lead group. The only problem is, of course, that if you want to close in this group, you've got to be running sort of in the 2:52, 2:55 range per kilometre. Kirui is back with them, so they've clearly eased off. Now that's very interesting, isn't it? Because Tadesse led for, what, 3-4 kilometres at a vicious pace. Really dragged this group away from the rest of what was only 15-20 minutes ago, a massive pack. And now they've eased off, and I suspect those 5 there behind Kirui are just trying to recover from what was a really tough 3 or 4K.
Yeah, Kirui looks very comfortable, doesn't he? The elder statesman of marathon runnings, having nothing to do with the surges of Tadesse, the half marathon specialist. So Kirui now through 25K, leading the men's marathon here at the Doha World Championships through 25K in 1:17.38, and we can bring you news a little bit further down the field. So through the top group of 6 are through 25K, and any moment now Callum Hawkins, who is down in 8th place, will be going through 25K. Following him is Ratchik of Italy, and just behind, sorry, we're just refreshing the splits, and Stephen Kiprotich looks like he's down in about 14th place, so the former Olympic champion some way off the lead, and Mohamed El Arabi of Morocco in about 13th place.
Well, at 25K, Kirui leading from Kipruto. Geramu, Makoka is there as well. Tadesse, of course. And he's making a very stout defence of his title. The time at 25K, 77.38, as you can see. And that would suggest a winning time of around the 2:11 area. But I suspect we'll see that gradually come down. And the reason they're able to move so well is because, if you have joined us in the last half hour or so, and we haven't mentioned in that time, conditions on the Corniche and here in the city of Doha, the capital of Qatar this evening, are far, far kinder for those walking around in the outdoors, whether they're in a marathon race or not. The humidity is way, way down, below 50%. It's about 29 degrees, but it's much, much cooler.
So I think we're having difficulty again with Hawkins's chip. He's running there with Lonyangata and Korea, who are currently in 8th and 9th place, but there's no mention of Hawkins in our computer chip timing, so there's definitely something gone wrong with his chip. Hawkins currently in about 8th and 9th place with that group.
Well, the race is building nicely. We're just past halfway. Remember, the leaders went through in 65.56. Let's have a look at the story so far, with the climax a little while away yet. Well, the early stages of the race saw the Paraguayan leading and building up a very big lead. Derlis Ramon Ayala Sanchez. The various international flags out along the side of the course are plenty. Remember, 42 nations here amongst these 73 starters. And while the big pack tried to negotiate, and look at that, Jari there of Zimbabwe saying, I couldn't get hold of a drink, this is ridiculous. You've got to look after yourself, every man for himself. While Ayala was building up a big lead, that pack was struggling at the drink stations. But it was inevitable that he would be reeled in, and indeed he was, just before halfway, and almost simultaneously dropping out about a minute after he was passed. Now, they take the turn there at the northern end of the circuit. And this pack of, what, 6 athletes who go through, with Callum Hawkins in there, and I think Miucci is in there as well, the Italian. Is that a couple of Moroccan vests there?
think that the Italian in that group may have been Ratchik. We'll bring you confirmation of that in just a moment. And Musobo of Uganda completely isolated between the lead group of 6 and group 3.
Yeah, Musobo looks strong, doesn't he? I mean, that group behind, what, probably 30, 40 metres back, and yet they're not closing, and he is running on very strongly. Interesting to see that left shin is taped. I don't know if he's been suffering from shin splints. Here's the view from that chasing pack. Now, this is the third pack. You can see the leading group, what, about 100 metres ahead. You can see those two Ethiopian vests, for example, up in front. Then Musobo is indeed isolated. They come to this drink station. This is not one of the specialist personal drink stations. No national flags at this, just water to go over the head and sponges there. Sponges grabbed by Corriere and Hawkins. Ratchik it is indeed of Italy, and El Arabi and Sali of Morocco running side by side. But Callum Hawkins almost seems to be rejuvenated a little bit by that cold water. Does it have that effect, Zara, if you're really suffering from the heat? I mean, you've run in plenty of really hot marathons. Do you get a wonderful cooling effect and a little surge from a cool sponge and cold water over your head?
Absolutely. I mean, having water on your skin is how you cool down, because the water or sweat evaporates, and that is how you get rid of heat in your body. So the athletes, of course, are going to be sweating profusely. It's 29 degrees. But if you can put water on your skin as well, that will, you know, serve to provide extra evaporation and hopefully cool you down even more. Of course, it's also refreshing. I'm not sure the sponges have been refrigerated, so the water in them might be a bit warm.
Well, I've got more news on pullouts for you. I'm afraid that the rot has started for the Ethiopians. Wazihun is out, one of the Ethiopian trio, one of the fastest men in the field for Ethiopia. That's Mule Wazihun, who's run 2:03.16 this year, has dropped out, and so has a Ugandan vest, this time filled by Mutai, Solomon Mutai. I'm afraid he is down and out. He's run 2:08 this year, so it is taking its effect, the heat, the relatively lower humidity. 27 kilometers then for this pack in 1:23.51. And Tadesse, Garamu, Kipruto, Kirui, Decisive and Makoka. Well, you could almost throw a blanket over the 6.
We said at the beginning the East Africans have been very dominant in distance running, and occasionally a non-East African comes along and spoils the party for them. But today, very much an East African marathon.
Absolutely, yes. And Tadesse, Garamu, Kipruto, Kirui, Decisive.
Looking a bit further down the field, Tim, Simbu of Tanzania, good championship racer, he's back down in 21st place. Arikan, the 2 times 10,000 meter European champion, down in 26th place. Japanese not having a good day today. Their top scorer at the moment down in 28th place.
Well, Arikan is out. That's a big European name in the colours of Turkey. He is a former Kenyan, of course, Arikan. He's a great track star from years gone by. Polat Kemboy Arikan, formerly Paul Kipkosgei Kemboy. The former track star, 9th in the Olympic 10,000 metres back in 2012. He is a great track racer, but not all great track racers, even at 5,000 and 10,000, take to the marathon. He's a former European cross-country champion. He's run 27:35 for 10,000, but he's had enough. He's a big fella, maybe a little bit too much muscle mass, who knows, for the marathon. His personal best is 2:08, which is beaten by many, many athletes. And Lonyangata is down and out. The big names beginning to trickle through.
Absolutely. Lonyangata, 2-time Paris champion. I think he's suffering from the heat there. I don't think that's an injury. I think he's suffering in the heat there.
Wow.
Interesting, actually, that in hot conditions, the smaller you are, the easier it is to dissipate heat. So these kind of conditions really favour the smaller athletes, and Lonyangata is one of the taller athletes in this field. So I just wonder if that's contributed to any suffering from the heat he may be experiencing. These athletes look quite big on your screens, but believe me, they are absolutely tiny. When I was racing, I was down at about 49 to 50 kilos. I met men, Japanese, Kenyan men, who weighed less than that.
Wow, they must have been small. You're not exactly the size of a barn door now, Mara. So back to these 6 then, and Musobo is isolated in 7th place. Checking his watch there, he runs past the drink stations, and the U should be towards the end of the line. They're in alphabetical order, of course, and he gets his drink, and no trouble grabbing that one. The pack behind him, well, I reckon they're 30, 35 metres back and maybe closing. He's moving well, but they've got to be moving pretty well also. So this race is far from done. The lead pack of 6, I rather suspect somebody in that pack is going to be able to kick off this tempo, Mara, but we're looking at athletes who are vying for a place in the top 10. A lead pack of 6, then Musobo isolated, and then that group of, well, we'll call it 4 for now.
They're quite spread out there, Tim, so I just wonder if at the front of that pace somebody's injected some pace, because they were quite bunched up a moment ago. You can see there it's down to about 4. They've lost one of the Moroccans off the back there, and Ratchik of Italy struggling to stay with them. So I think it's Correa of Kenya putting his foot down at the front of that group, but Callum Hawkins looking pretty relaxed at the moment. And I think they're gaining on the Ugandan, who is just ahead of them, Musobo.
Well, I can tell you another pull-out, Surey of Bahrain, the lad I said who has run 3:31 for 1,500 metres. He's a 2:07 performer. He's down and out as well. So they are beginning to rack up. And it's not really, I think, because of the steamy hot conditions, because they're not steamy hot conditions. It's warm, it's pretty warm, but it's certainly not nearly as humid as for the last couple of weeks here. But they are just athletes who have run too hard to this point.
And we certainly, Tim, haven't seen as many dropouts as we saw in the women's marathon. Quite early on in that race, some of the athletes were dropping out, but we've seen much fewer in this race. It is some 3 degrees cooler, but what I think makes the most difference is that the humidity has dropped dramatically.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting. Kipruto there, passing a drink to Makoka, as if to say, look, the gloves aren't off yet. We're all chums. When we get to 30k, maybe into the last 10k, then I'm not sure I will be quite so friendly. I certainly think that's the way my mentality would work, is that we're all running along side by side, relatively comfortable, waiting for the fireworks to really begin. But is it, a lot of coaches would say, what are you playing at? You're actually helping an opponent when we're getting towards the business end of a marathon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're really supposed to hand drinks amongst yourselves, but you do see it a lot. Interesting then, Makoka keeps looking behind. I don't know what he's looking for. And he was, a few moments ago, we saw him chatting to the man next to him. I just wonder if he's really plugged into this race. He certainly looks like he's going pretty easy.
Well, Musobo being reeled in, and it is the Kenyan vest of Correa that is dragging him in. Laban Correa. The average of his best 10 marathons, Correa, is 2:06.57. He's a fabulously consistent racer. 9th in Barcelona this year in 2:09. 12th in Hamburg in 2:11. But he's run 2:05 twice. 3 times he's run 2:06. Twice he's run 2:07. Those all in the last 4 years, or the period up to from 2015 up to 2018, discounting 2019. He is one of the most consistent of this last 10 or 20 years. Salih looking strong, the Moroccan there in his wake, and Hawkins, I think there, and Musobo, who the 3 of them have passed. Musobo in that yellow of Uganda left a picture. Hawkins just struggling to go with this. This is a pretty vicious acceleration from Correa, and we'll check with the splits as quickly as we can, but I suspect the tempo that Correa's laying down here, Mara, is closing on that lead group of 6.
Yeah, I think the way they've got spread out, and suddenly Hawkins is dropped back a bit, I think he's really putting the pressure on. Interesting, Salih seems to be looking pretty comfortable and going with Correa. There have, of course, been some very good Moroccan marathon runners in the past. Jaoud Garib, two-time champion in this race in 2003 and 2005. And then his compatriots, El Arabi, and in fact, sorry, not a compatriot, Salih himself, the bronze medal winner at the 2019, so earlier this summer, 2019 All Africa Games.
Well, still that pack of 6 locked together at the front end. Kirui, the defending champion, negotiates that turn at the southern end of the course with his compatriot Amos Kipruto right alongside him. Stephen Makoka is there for South Africa, giving a great account of himself. Their time at 29k, 1:30.04. And here's the chasing pack, and they are passing 30k, about 20 seconds down, not much more. This Mara is still in the third quarter of the race, well, just, but we're beginning to reach that point that I described earlier, perhaps rather nonchalantly, as the halfway point. 30k is coming up. But is this where you really have to start digging deep? Yeah,
I think this is the toughest part of a marathon they're in now, because they're starting to really suffer. They've done 29 kilometers in difficult conditions, but you're still a long way from the finish. You know, we said that halfway is not 21 kilometers, it's more like 25, 30 kilometers. And, you know, they're racing now, they're really piling on the pressure. But they've been out there for an hour and a half, but still some, 40, 45 minutes to go. So this is where you really need to dig deep, try and keep positive. People say, how do you keep positive when you're suffering? What I used to do is set myself small goals. So get to the next kilometer, get to the next lamppost, get to the next, whatever it might be, palm tree. And just really try to keep focused on the here and now, so that any negative thoughts in your head don't affect your physical performance.
You see, you're so young, you can still remember that sort of goal when you were racing. When I'm talking about the next something nowadays, at my stage of life, it's the next pub. Keep getting to the next pub, get to the next pub. But, of course, for a nice glass of cooling Coke. Well, that pack of 6 at 29k, 30k has just clicked by, 1:33.13 at 30k. So the pack of 6 remaining clear at the moment, but they are being reeled in. Correa doing that chasing has got them within 14 seconds. They're about 70 or 80 meters down. And look at Makoka here. Now, this is a significant surge from the little South African, still bouncing along. He looks fabulous, doesn't he? And Decisive in the light blue, who a minute ago looked to be in control, and he's twice taken big stints at the front and pushed the pace along and tested the other 5, is struggling. Makoka here, bouncing along. And he's looking to see what sort of damage he's doing. Makoka
has been looking really easy for the last few kilometers. And he broke the South African record for the half marathon earlier this year in Buenos Aires, 59:50. And his 2:07:40 personal best is also from this year, 34 years of age. So he's looking in great form. He has 24 South African titles across 3 different surfaces.
Well, there's that leading sextet. And who is dropping off the back? I think that's Kirui towards the back of the group, just beginning to struggle. And Tadesse is certainly feeling the pace as well. The 2 Ethiopian vests who are looking good. And remember, one Ethiopian, Wazihun, has dropped out. 2 Ethiopian vests looking good at the moment. Makoka there to the right of that lead group, just glancing to his left, almost as though he's saying something to the Ethiopians. I'm not quite sure what. Maybe he's saying, look, I'm feeling good, but I don't want to be the guy who has to lead the whole time and keep surging. I think Makoka is clean to break this group down from 6, and perhaps he feels it's a little too big. And if he isn't the one continuing to push and it slows, then all that hard work is wasted, because you can see in the background athletes beginning to close in. And I think that is the Moroccan vest of Salih, Hamza Salih, who is beginning to close in 7th place.
Yeah, Salih was looking very fresh just a few minutes ago, and he's definitely got that lead group in his sight. There he is, looking very comfortable. So Salih, he's dropped, I think it was Korea he was with, and looking very strong at the moment. So Hawkins there in the 3rd group, some 19 seconds down on the leaders, only 5 seconds behind Correa and Sali. It's interesting, to me, Hawkins looks like he's kept a bit more of a steady pace going, whereas ahead of him the others really putting on the pressure. It's all very well going with surges, but if you burn off too much energy at this sort of stage, you can really suffer in the final kilometres. And in this kind of race, you really want to have a good finish. We saw João Vieira and Evan Dunphy in the men's 50k walk really come through the field in the final stages, and then the German Linker also. Roberta Groner in the women's marathon coming up to 6th place in the final stages.
Well, here's some of the chasers. Mateo of Spain, along with Abraham of Switzerland. Remember him in the early stages, looking good. Is that Abbasi, El Abbasi too, of Morocco, surviving at the moment. And you can hear some of the athletes having their times shouted out at them. I think I saw or heard Hawkins of Britain having information yelled at him a few minutes ago. Makoko kicking on again. South Africa proudly roaring on this lad who has been around for quite a while. It's not as if he's new to the scene. He's 34 years old. He's 24-time South African champion across 3 different surfaces. He's you know, you look at the World Championships back in 2011 in Daegu. He was 13th in the 10,000 meters there. He has run 13:11. He's got real pedigree. He's run 3:38 for 1,500 meters. That's worth about a 3:55 mile. He's run 27:40 for 10,000. And he's got great form on the roads as well. He's a 2:07 performer, is Stephen Makoko. Indeed, has set a personal best earlier on this year.
No athlete from South Africa, Tim, has won a medal of any kind in the history of these World Championships in the men's marathon. So if he can keep this going, he could be making history.
Well, I tell you what, he's the man who's asked as many questions as anybody over the last half hour. So, Sali there, passing Kirui. Kirui has dropped back. He was in 6th place, isolated. Now Sali has moved through, and this is a strong run from the Moroccan, the unheralded Moroccan Sali. And you'd think you'd expect people at this stage of the race to be up at the front end to be sub 2:10 performers. His lifetime best, Hamza Sali, 2:10.19. He's heading for something not much outside that in these conditions. He's having a great run.
A relative newcomer to the marathon, Tim. He's only done 5 marathons, according to our records, but he did win the bronze medal at the African Games half marathon earlier this year. Personal best in the half of 62:45, 26 years old. So Hawkins there. Hawkins, I believe, currently in 9th place. We'll bring you the latest splits as soon as we get them. And the latest splits from the leaders, Makoko, Kipruto, Geremu, and 2 others, they were on 3 minutes per kilometre, which is just about 2:08 pace. So, interesting that in these cooler temperatures, we're seeing a much quicker pace than I was expecting. Currently, certainly not going to be the slowest ever winning time in these World Championships, as we've seen in all the outdoor races so far here.
I'm just thinking of great names from South Africa's Olympic marathon running story of the last 25 years or so. You can go back to 1996, Josiah Tugwane, remember him? He'd been shot in the face earlier on in his life, but Tugwane went on to take gold on the streets of Atlanta. Hendrik Ramala took the New York Marathon title, I think. Now, he was a good example of a half marathon runner who had to really persevere and bet himself into the marathon distance. He was a great half marathon runner, several times under the 60-minute barrier when it was very rare. Took him, I think it was until about his 5th or 6th marathon, he actually got it right. And of course, distance running in South Africa is massively popular. This Comrades marathon, as they call it. What is it, 56 miles, Comrades? It's roughly 2 marathons end on end.
Yeah, and it alternates. One year it's uphill overall and the other year down. Also the 2 Oceans Ultra, another classic iconic race in South Africa.
Well, you know what, I've heard in the past, obviously, that there is a downhill version and an uphill version, but apparently there's not much difference. The downhill is still very, very tough, I understand. So,
Yeah.
it's probably the most famous ultra-distance race, and what is it? Is it about 20,000, 30,000 run it? It's a monstrous event.
Yeah, it's a huge event. I've heard that the downhill is tougher also on your quads. So Sali there looking very comfortable but isolated.
Well, he is, and there's I think he's having a little bit of a breather now, maybe. He's past Kirui in the background there. He was only about 30 metres back. And Kirui now being reeled in by Korea. We saw that surge, that charge from Korea a little while back, and ironically, the target he's had for the last few minutes has been his compatriot. A grimace there from Korea. Jeffrey Korea, the defending champion, who himself is a fabulous track runner, 26.55 for 10,000 metres back in 2012. I don't think he's going to be retaining his title here today. And look at that little glance of camaraderie from the defending champion to Korea, who eases past him. Jeffrey Korea is only, Kirui rather, is only 26. Laban Korea, to the right of picture, 33 years old, maybe showing the wisdom of experience of those additional years. Here's the man who has so much consistency over the full marathon distance again and again. They negotiate this northern split, or this northern turn, I should say. Callum Hawkins going well. Well, I thought the way Laban Korea eased away from him 10 minutes ago, Callum was hitting a bad patch, but he's actually seems to be rejuvenated and is still going strongly.
Interesting there, we saw Callum Hawkins take quite a wide path out of that turn. You can go close into the turn and take it wide on as you leave, as Callum just did there, or you can go wide going into it. Of course, I'm sure these athletes will have been practicing doing a U-turn, knowing that there were lots of U-turns coming up in this course. So now into the last 10k of this race, they're past 33, so into the last 9k of this race, and this is really where the race starts to really get going. So some of these athletes will be aiming to win. You know, looking at the whole field, we've got 73 athletes here, but out of that 73, only a small number will really believe and plan that they can win, and those athletes will be amongst this lead group. So these athletes probably now thinking, okay, if I'm going to win or get a medal in this race, when and how am I going to try and get rid of my fellow runners in the group and get a gap.
Hawkins then has eased past Jeffrey Kirui, and Hawkins up into 8th place, I believe, if Sali, the Moroccan, is in 6th behind this quintet. Tadesse there at the back of the group having a little glance over his shoulder. This is the man in 6th place. Kipruto in 7th, Hawkins in 8th. Now, I think I can trust my maths. It's never been my strong point, but I have that third 10k segment as a 29.51. Really, really vicious, the third 10k.
Wow.
29.51 after the first 10k was 30.41. The second 10k I got at 31.57. The pack really eased along there, while the Paraguayan didn't really charge through 20k, but then they gathered themselves, took a deep breath, and it was Tadesse who started doing the real damage at the beginning of that third 10k segment. 29.51, the third 10k. I suspect it will be the quickest of the race, because I think they eased off at the front end. You can see Kipruto there saying, come on fellas, share the pace, help me with this, because the longer they dawdle, if they slow down, and I'm pretty sure they have, the more you're going to see Sali behind closing in on them, and all the hard work to build that gap is effectively wasted, because others behind you are just holding more steady tempo. Surging, slowing, and surging and slowing looks impressive, but ultimately is not the optimum way to cover a distance.
That's right, yeah. I mean, the optimum way to cover any distance is even pace, because as soon as you diverge from that, when you're going faster than even pace, you end up burning off energy excessively, burning off carbohydrate. And let's remember, these athletes are now into the dreaded hitting the wall territory, where you run out of carbohydrate. They're, of course, very well trained for the marathon, and they'll be supremely efficient at burning fat and running aerobically, which is the key for the marathon. But if you surge and then slow down, surge, slow down, you end up burning off more carbohydrate than you need to if you're running at an even pace.
Couple more dropouts for you. Kiplagat of Azerbaijan. Evans Kiplagat, I'm afraid, has dropped out, along with Duo of China. We saw him earlier on. Duo Bougie of China, who's a 2:10 performer. He is gone as well. So they are gradually dropping by the wayside. Callum Hawkins up into 7th place and moving really well, getting plenty of support. Now, Mara, I mentioned earlier, a long time ago now, that he's been training in his shed back in Scotland. He said, well, look, it's actually quite a big shed. He tried to start giving it some respectability, but basically he's been training in his garden shed. He said he's bought a whole load of heaters from a local store, stacked them up in the shed, and just got on with running on a treadmill in there to acclimatise. And I tell you what, it's paying dividends, because he looks strong, doesn't he? He's a lovely looking runner, Callum Hawkins. He has run 60 minutes exactly for a half marathon in Japan a couple of years back, and he appears to have dropped Kirui and Correa, the pair of them back there, and Hawkins surging now, got the bit between his teeth.
Yeah, he looks very comfortable. No signs really of heat stroke, although of course at the Gold Coast it was in the very final stages, the last mile or so, when he collapsed. But Hawkins so far looking very comfortable. It's interesting how athletes tackle this heat acclimatization thing. So Hawkins has heaters set up in his shed at home. Other athletes, I know some of the British athletes have been training in a heat chamber at the local university in South London, near where I live. Others may have gone to hot countries. Some have been training in Cyprus, in Rome. One of the Italian race walkers had been preparing in Rome. Another was Barcelona. Then, of course, if you can't get to a hot country, wearing lots of layers training. When I was training in St. Moritz in Switzerland years ago, I used to wear lots of layers just to get into the habit of sweating a lot and getting my body used to coping with the heat.
Well, Kipruto at the front of the marathon has gone through 34k in 1:45:38. Mokoka at the front right now. That was a 3:15, that 34th kilometre. Now that is slow. They've slowed significantly.
Yeah, 3:15 is just inside 2:18 finish time, so definitely slowed down. I'm not quite sure what happened there. I just wonder if Mokoka got a bit fed up with the others not sharing the pace-making duties, and that's why it slowed down. But it looks like he's pressing on, and I think this next split is going to be significantly quicker.
Well, you're right, and you know, it's lovely to see, because he is a good-looking runner. I mean, I mentioned earlier that I think that rather bouncy style of the South African is too bouncy. It's extravagant. 35k is too extravagant for the marathon, but who cares if he carries on running so strongly. 1:48:48 at 35k. Kipruto, Geremu, Decisive and Tadesse, and the gaps are there. And Tadesse about 25 metres down. Sali of Morocco in 6th place is beginning to close. He's back behind this group, and this is why I think Mokoka has surged there. You can hear the bell. 1 lap to run here on the Corniche in Doha. Kipruto up alongside Mokoka. It's beginning to thin out. Decisive left a picture in 5th place. Maybe has shot his bolt. He's done so much of the aggressive running mid-race. He was the man who initially pulled this little group away from a big pack, but he's paying the price now. Perhaps he should have kept his powder dry for later in the day. Decisive there in the background in those Ethiopian colours. Such a flat-footed looking runner at times, isn't he? It's almost like he's running on eggshells.
Not nearly as bouncy as Mokoka, that's for sure. He needs to do his strength and conditioning. If I were his coach, I'd be telling him to activate his glute muscles.
Done any coaching, Maura?
Sure have. And I tell about 99% of my athletes to activate their glutes before running, because sitting down for hours switches them off. We've just seen Hawkins go past the front of our commentary box looking very relaxed.
Well, that would explain why I did a 20-minute jog a few days ago, and my legs were sore for 3 days. It was my first run for about 2 weeks. Mokoka leading, though. Kipruto, Geremu and Decisive. We're down to 4. It was 6 for a long time. Then 5. Kirui dropped away, the defending champion. And I think Decisive might have shot his bolts. As Hawkins, 4th in London, chasing this man, is in 7th place. This is Salih of Morocco in 6th. He surely has got Tadesse now in his sights, the blue vest of the Eritrean. Here is Tadesse. He's run really strongly. This in a way, perhaps his best ever marathon performance on a global scene. You know, he's had plenty of attempts as Zersnay Tadesse. He's never quite got it right. He's run 7 marathons. Let's just see, he dropped out of London 09, he dropped out of Chicago 13, Boston 15. I think he started 7 marathons, he's only finished 5. He actually ran 2:06.51 in that Monza sub-2 attempt a couple of years back as he was supporting Eliud Kipchoge, but that was an invalid performance. Let's be perfectly frank, the rules are picked and chosen according to what they want to keep in. Well, Eritrea had the winner back in 2015 through Germe Gebreselassie, who I think was only 19 at the time.
That's right, the youngest ever winner of this event.
But I'm not sure they're going to get a winner today. As you can see, Tadesse there in the background in the light blue, struggling to stay with this quartet, and Mokoka bouncing along in that lovely style of his. Kipruto has kept himself very much to himself, hasn't he? Amos Kipruto. This is his 8th marathon. He's the lad who I said last year ran 2:06 twice, 27 years old, ran his personal best a couple of years ago in Amsterdam. Actually, almost 2 years ago to the day, on the 15th of October back in 2016, he ran 2:05.43. Kipruto there to the left of picture. He's giving a really good set count of himself at the moment, just dropping his arms there to try and relax. And the Geremu hasn't really taken a turn at the front either. He's been feeding off what everybody else has done. In fact, just thinking about it, you know, at Tadesse, Zersnay Tadesse, they left a picture in the blue, dropping back in 5th, has been to the front at times. Mokoka has done plenty of leading. Kipruto, I think he's hit the front once or twice, but the 2 Ethiopian vests there, Geremu and Decisive, surely getting sucker from each other's presence, are athletes who have not yet hit the front. And even now, look, they look reluctant to just get their nose in front, keep letting Kipruto stay there, one stride ahead of them. That was a bit bizarre. They eased past Mokoka, who slowed dramatically to try and get these two to go past him. I think Mokoka is turning this into almost a track race with half a lap to run. They've got very little ground to cover.
And I think Tadesse there is in danger now of being caught by Salih, the Moroccan, and Hawkins.
Well, this is Salih coming through, just a few seconds down. He's in 6th place, Hawkins in 7th place. They've got a target there, look at that. They're very, very close, all the first 7 within about 100 meters. Salih now being reeled in by Hawkins. There's a lowering of the hips there from the Moroccan. He's tired, and Hawkins is steaming up to his shoulder. And as the coaching manuals say, when you catch somebody, put in a little acceleration, demoralize them, pull away from them quickly. You can see Salih there try to latch into the slipstream of the Briton. Hawkins now has got quite a big gap ahead of him. Tadesse will be his next target.
Absolutely, you've got to go right past athletes when you overtake them. Don't give them any chance to hang on to you and use you as a pacemaker. So Mokoka now a bit in trouble in this lead group. I think Decisive has put his foot down and spread them out. So the 2 Ethiopians trying to do some damage to the Kenyan Kipruto.
We know what? They won't only be roaring this man on, Lalisa Decisive. They won't only be roaring him on in the streets of Addis Ababa, but in the city of Boston as well. Twice winner in Boston in 2013 and 2015. Ironically, he didn't finish the one in between. Boston 2014 he dropped out of, and then finished 2nd in New York later on that November. But his win in Boston 2013 was historic. It was one of the most memorable performances, not just because of his win, but because, of course, it came just a few minutes before that awful, awful bombing of the crowds near the finish line. And he gave his winner's medal to the city as a mark of respect in view of the terrorist bombings, saying sport should never be used as a battleground. Of course it shouldn't, but within the realms of sport itself, battlegrounds are very, very common. And this is a battle going on now. 4 does not go into 3. There are 3 medals up for grabs. We're on the final straight here of this marathon. And these men who are heading northwards, they've got, what, about 12 minutes of running to go. 37 kilometers done. They've got 5K to go, so probably a bit more than that. 37K, 1:54.55, and Decisive here beginning to turn the screw, making it hurt.
all four in that group look pretty comfortable to me, Tim. I think we're in for a mighty burn-up to the finish. Geremu, that incredible 2:02.59 earlier this year, which at the time was an Ethiopian record, but now been bettered by Kenenisa Bekele just a week ago.
Let's have a look at the gap. There's that leading quartet. Remember, 2 Ethiopians, a Kenyan and a South African. Those are the vests in the leading 4 there. Geremu and Decisive, Kipruto and Mokoka. And the gap 9 seconds back to Tadesse, who is really suffering. Hawkins is a further 7 seconds behind Tadesse. That's an awkward gap to cross for Callum Hawkins here, who's got to be hurting. He's a fabulous physical specimen, the young Briton. 27 years old now. He's started 6 marathons. He's finished 5, of course, that infamous failing to finish from heat stroke at the Commonwealth Games last year, but he was 10th in London this year in 2:08.14. He's definitely still a growing force. 4th in the World Championships in 2017, although 26 seconds off the bronze medal. He's coached by his father, Robert, and has had some advice from one of the grand old men. You won't like me saying old, but one of the great racers from Great Britain, Steve Jones, lives in Boulder, Colorado, and he's advised Callum on occasion. And this is a determined run from the Briton, who's clearly hurting. My only fear is this battle between this leading 4 may, over these last 4 kilometres or so, draw them clear from Hawkins. Even if he surges, he would have to put in a double acceleration to catch them.
Yeah, absolutely. 3:03 was the, sorry, 3:02 for Decisive was the last split we had, which is about 2:08 pace. So they're really, they're perhaps not speeding up, but they're certainly not slowing down. And Tadesse now isolated. Don't forget, a top 10 finish here is a Tokyo Olympics qualifier. So all these athletes at the moment on track to do that. Of course, a lot of them have also done the time required of 2:11.30.
Listen to the roaring on of the spectators there beside the course. 38K in 1:58.04. And that leading quartet have 8 seconds over Tadesse at that point. They have 16 seconds over Callum Hawkins. That's an awkward 70 metres or so back to the Briton, but he can see them. And I think maybe he's just beginning to close very, very slowly.
Yeah, as soon as we have the latest splits, we'll bring them to you. So this lead group just past 38K, and that split was 3:09 for Kipruto, and just approaching 2 a.m. in the morning here in Doha on the Corniche.
Now, here's a thing. Let's try and get Callum Hawkins' split. Hawkins, his split 3:07, so he's closed 2 seconds over the last kilometre. The Briton has 4 kilometres in which to catch them. The trouble is that he's 14 seconds down. He might just run out of Qatari roadway. And he's hurting. Grimacing hard there, but he is closing on Tadesse, who has had a fabulous day at the races. He really has. At the age of 37, he's defied expectation. Whatever he finishes in now, Tadesse has run a wonderful marathon here in Doha. You have to give him credit. It's been a very determined attempt from him, and as ever, he's always been an aggressive racer, always likes to go to the front and rock from side to side and test his opponents. Well, today, that testing has led to his own undoing. He can't quite get back in touch with this quartet. Mokoka, Kipruto, Geremu, Decisive. I still rather like Decisive because he has that vicious finishing speed that's carried him to one finish, one win after another. But place your bets, folks, because 2 hours on the clock now. These men are heading for a finishing time of something in the 2:11 region, I should think, something like that. So yeah, not much more than 10 minutes of racing to come.
And if Kipruto can win this men's marathon, he'll join his compatriot Ruth Chepngetich, who won the women's marathon last week. That has been done before. Kenyans Endereba and Luke Kibet both won the marathons at the Osaka World Championships back in 2007.
Well, Kenya have won so many titles. East Africans won the last 6 titles. The last 9 titles in total have been won by men from Africa. That includes Moroccans, of course. It's a big old continent. And Hawkins gets some reward for his hard work over the last 20 minutes or so. He reels into Decisive, who tried to get into his slipstream there, but couldn't hold that tempo. And a little glance over his shoulder is telling, isn't it, as Hawkins moves into 5th place, or 6th place, because although we haven't seen him for a while, the Moroccan, as far as we're aware, is still in 5th place. That would be Hamza Salih. There he is, there's Salih, as if by magic. And Salih actually back in 7th place now. Of course, Hawkins passed him a few minutes ago. He's been making such steady progress, Hawkins. I'm forgetting who he's passed, but he has moved up into 5th place.
So Hawkins' last split 3:04 and Makoko at the front 3:14. So Hawkins is running 10 seconds per kilometre faster than the leaders with 3 kilometres to run, and the gap on the latest split, according to our computers, is only 4 seconds. That's right, so only 4 seconds you can see in that shot there. So Hawkins catching quickly on that lead group of 4.
So at 39k, 2:01.18, as Mara says quite rightly, Hawkins is flying. There is the gap. Boy, oh boy, these 4 are playing an awkward game. They've been playing cat and mouse now for quite a few minutes. It's enabling the Briton, who finished 4th 2 years ago, to close up on them very quickly indeed. And he has accelerated, Callum Hawkins. He's working hard. We've seen him grimacing a couple of times in the last 10 minutes or so. There's a lot of relaxed faces in this leading quartet, particularly from Kipruto. I have to say, the Kenyan, with that slight forward lean of the torso, looks wonderfully relaxed.
So Hawkins now, he's doing brilliantly to close this gap, but he really needs to just save something for the final stages, because these 4 look very comfortable. If Hawkins gets back on that group, but he's completely spent, he won't have anything for the sprint finish. But he's pretty much back on that group now. No British man has ever won a medal of any kind in the World Championships. The Ethiopians, they have 4 silvers, 3 bronzes, but only 1 gold medal so far. But South Africa have never won any medal of any kind. Kenya, multiple medals they've won. Let's see, 4 gold medals, 5 gold medals and 3 silvers. So Hawkins now in a great place. Now Hawkins needs to just take a little breather now. He's got back on that group, but he doesn't want to. He's going straight past. Oh my word.
So Kipruto there suddenly realizes just how much they've been dawdling for the last 15 minutes or so. 4 changes to 5, and 5 certainly doesn't go into 3 any better than 4 does. But who in this group is going to be the first to lose patience and cut loose? Kipruto looks very smooth indeed, doesn't he? Lovely symmetry, balance to his running. There he negotiates that final turn, 2:04.20, as they make that final turn at the northern end of the course. And Hawkins continues his acceleration. Kipruto there onto his shoulder, almost banging elbows with Hawkins. There's a Tadesse. Well, gamely rocking on, the grand old man of half marathon racing, back in 6th place.
And through 40k now, the last split, 3:06 for Kipruto, 3:02 for Hawkins. So Hawkins absolutely went like a train to close that gap.
Callum Hawkins of Britain then. We focused on him again and again in the race because he's such a tough racer, and the images of him collapsing at the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast in March 2018 went viral around the world. It was a heartbreaking scene, and of course it took him a long time to get over it. Many people thought he'd never bounce back from it. Well, he has. He took his time. It wasn't really until late in 2018 we started hearing about performances, 1 or 2 small low-key races that showed he was returning to something like his best form. And then, of course, in London this year, the gloves came off and he showed that he was close to back to his best with a 2:08 clocking. And you can see that Makoko is dropping away off this group. Well, Hawkins has done so much hard work to regain contact with the leading quartet. He's gone up past them, continues to surge, and it has done possibly for the South African, Stephen Makoko, who I thought has looked fantastic for the second half of the race throughout. But Hawkins finished fourth 2 years ago. Can you imagine finishing fourth a second time in the World Championships? I'll tell you an athlete who does know that feeling, a certain Briton called John Brown. Fourth in 2 consecutive Olympic marathons, can you believe? And he was an angry man after the second performance because he felt he was competing against athletes who were, let's just say, not the real deal. He's become a Canadian citizen now, John Brown. I know he'll be watching this over in Vancouver. But Hawkins here, a proud Scotsman. They'll be yelling him on in the pubs of Scotland, in Glasgow and Edinburgh and every other city throughout that proud nation, even though he's in the colours of Great Britain. But those 2 Ethiopian vests, and Kipruto in particular, for my money, clinging on and looking pretty comfortable. Hawkins, I hope and pray, is not becoming the sacrificial lamb here that has helped these other 3 rid themselves of Makoko, because none of them put in the work to do so. It was a quartet that probably for about a 20-minute period just looked so comfortable. None of them was able to whittle it down. It's ironic that the man that's caught them has been working so much harder the last half hour, has come up and has whittled it down.
That's right, this is the danger. If you're dawdling along and you really know you have to make the pace go faster and nobody will do the work, you have to do it. And so the 3 Africans now, and Hawkins struggling to stay on that group. Can he just hang on and dig deep and hang on to the Ethiopians and Kipruto of Kenya? So Callum Hawkins now in 4th place.
This is what I feared, that those 3 were a little bit fresher than Hawkins. They've been idling almost, if I can put it like that, for about half an hour. Hawkins had closed up on them. Salih did so much of the hard chasing as well, the Moroccan, who was still back in 7th place. But these 3 look fresh for my money. 3 from East Africa, Kipruto, Decisive, Geremu. On paper, all of them many minutes faster than Callum Hawkins. Let's just remind you that the Britain's lifetime best is 2:08.14. Well, Kipruto has run 2:05.43. He's 2.5 minutes better. They've gone through 41k. They have just over 1,000 metres left, and Hawkins cannot go with it. Agonising for the Briton. Makoko in the background in 5th place, still trying to run on hard and maybe battle for 1 extra place in the finishing order. But Hawkins here has done so well. He's had targets for the last 40 minutes or so, gradually reeling in one athlete after another.
Tim, I ran the Yokohama Marathon in 2011, and exactly this situation occurred with about 1 kilometre to go, and the woman who got dropped just found an extra gear and got back into the medal. So Hawkins, can he find something to get back? And Kipruto now suffering. So can Hawkins hang on to Kipruto and close that gap?
Well, Decisive has deceptive speed. Those arms rock from side to side in an ungainly manner. Look at his arm action compared with that of Geremu, his compatriot. A 1-2 for Ethiopia is in the offing. Kipruto, who I thought has just moved so wonderfully. He's a beautiful stride to him. Cannot go with this surge, and it's a vicious attack here from Decisive. And it's coming down to 2-way domestic battle for the big 2 from Ethiopia. Their compatriot, remember, dropping out long ago. There was nothing that they could do about that. I'm sure they're still not even aware that Wazihun is gone. But Decisive here, kicking on, almost 2:10 on the clock.
Yeah, so these 2 Ethiopians going for an Ethiopian title for the first time since 2001, and their compatriot Abera won back in Edmonton in 2:12. And we're on for a pretty fast time here.
Decisive gets daylight. He's timed it to perfection. 200 metres to run. And it is Decisive surely who is heading for gold. Geremu, his compatriot, back in 2nd place. Kipruto will get the bronze for Kenya. Now, can Decisive be caught at this stage? Surely not. The finish line beckons. There it is. And it is going to be a win for Lalisa Decisive. Twice the Boston champion, the reigning New York champion, is world champion. How he has worked for this day. His time unofficially 2:10.41, 2:10.44 there for Geremu. It's a gold and silver for Ethiopia. What a championships they've had. And a bronze there for Kipruto, the best of the rest, the best of the Kenyans in his 8th marathon. Callum Hawkins another fourth. Your heart has to go out to the Briton. He has worked so desperately hard for this. Hawkins' time in fourth place, 2:10.25. That winning time has come up as the season's best for Lalisa Decisive at 2:10.40. I'm not sure about that. I think he's run a 2:7.59 this year. But it matters not a jot. This wasn't about times, this was about racing. No pacemakers, championship racing at its best. Brilliant stuff from Decisive, Geramiun, Kipruto. Two Ethiopians and a Kenyan nab the medals. The men from East Africa do it again. Callum Hawkins fourth in 2:10.25. Stephen Makoka fifth, 2:10.33. He stayed clear of Tadesse. Sali in seventh place. How he worked for that. Well embedded in the top 10. And the massed ranks of photographers getting the shot they want. Well, Ethiopia already celebrating that astonishing run by Kenenisa Bekele last Sunday at the Berlin Marathon, which somewhat bizarrely took place during these championships. His winning time in Berlin, 2 hours, 1 minute and 41 seconds in a race with pacemakers on a dead flat course with almost perfect weather conditions, as is the case year after year in Berlin. Well, here it wasn't about good weather conditions. On a flat course, there were no pacemakers. The race and the pace seesawed backwards and forwards through the first three quarters, and then the men at the front found themselves joined by Callum Hawkins, and that was almost a spur to make this man Decisive kick away and run to gold. The party has started for the Ethiopians. Well, as Mara, who's rushed out of our commentary booth to head over for the interviews, hopefully the interviews, said the last Ethiopian gold, the only Ethiopian gold at these championships, was Gazahegne Abera in 2001 on the streets of Edmonton, Canada. He finished ahead of Simon Biwott of Kenya, and so did Stefano Baldini of Italy, who has had his moment in the sun back in 2000, who would have his moment in the sun in 2004 in Athens at the Olympic Games, where of course he took glorious gold for Italy. But that was great racing to witness, wasn't it? What a privilege. The halfway split, that was 65-56, so it was indeed negative splits here on the streets of Doha. Lalisa Decisive, his winning time confirmed at 2:10.40, much faster than I think we'd have seen had we had the same conditions as for the women's race 8 days ago. Mozinet Germiu, 2:10.44, 4 seconds down for the silver for Ethiopia as well, and Kipruto, 2:10.51 in third place with that bronze for Kenya. Hawkins contributed to the unfolding acts. Makoka did far more than his fair share. Tadesse likewise. He finished down in sixth place, the Eritrean, eventually in 2:11.29. So many athletes played their part to make it a truly dramatic World Championship marathon. With 1 day to go at these 17th IAAF World Athletics Championships.
Okay. Right here, guys.
We were treated to true drama here on the Corniche.
Okay, that's it. There we go.
Well, let's take a look back at some of the images of this race as we see the three medalists posing with their national flags and the satisfaction of a medal as reward. This, the winning moment for Lalisa Decisive, 2:10.40 as he crossed the line. That irresistible finishing speed that has taken him to one win after another over the years, yet again worked its magic. He is so strong, and it's desperately hard to raise a sprint on tired legs. He was second in Boston back in April, a winner here in a race of infinitely more significance, with all due respect to my friends in Boston. He is world champion, this young man, and at the age of 29, loves racing in North America, His personal best, by the way, was back in Dubai in 2013 in 2:04, and it was his debut. That's all, his debut. He's run 15 marathons, in fact 16 including tonight, but he cannot go faster than that original race, his first ever marathon, all of nearly, 6 3/4 years ago, I suppose. And celebrating with what look to be teammates, I think they're on the sidelines. Lovely scenes of celebration. They're so proud. And his agent there gives him an additional hug. Well, you know what they say, records are borrowed, but medals are forever. This sort of achievement, in many people's eyes, carries so much more merit, so much more significance in the history books. In years to come, people will look at his name, but it carries so much more significance than just a super fast time in a pace-made race. He's going to get dragged over those barriers in a minute. He's being strangled. All right, boys, look. Give me another 20 minutes to recover, will you? The enthusiasm of his supporters is extraordinary, and I think he's probably earned that sit down, don't you? Well, Mohsinnet Geramiu, who took the silver medal, ran 2:02.55 in London this year to finish second behind Eliud Kipchoge, and he was, until last Sunday in Berlin, the fastest loser ever. But Geramiu, a loser tonight, but it's an unfair word, isn't it, to describe the bravery of the Ethiopian who took the silver medal. Second fastest time in history now is by another Ethiopian, Legesse, or Bekele rather, who was second last week. There it is then, the win for Lalisa Decisive, a season's best of 2:10.40 for the Ethiopian. Gold for him here on the streets of Doha. Mohsinnet Geramiu, his compatriot, the silver medal, 2:10.44. The sprint was won by Decisive. Amos Kipruto, a brave run for that bronze medal there, getting Kenya onto the rostrum. And Callum Hawkins, the best of the rest, the first European, of course, 2:10.57. A brilliant run for the Briton, but he will be desperately disappointed in many respects because he was fourth 2 years ago in London. Makoka attacked so many times in the second half, the South African rewarded with fifth place. Tadesse, likewise, in the colours of Eritrea. He ran a brave race. Well, Korea finishing down in 11th place. Jeffrey Kirui, the 2017 champion, having settled for 14th. He had a torrid last few kilometres. Gebrselassie Fanil of Italy in 15th. Simbu of Tanzania in 16th. Stephen Kiprotich, former world champion, an Olympic champion in London 2012, down in 18th place. Behind the Ugandan in 18th, well, here they are. Ahmed Osman of the USA in 23rd place, 2:16.22, 5 minutes 42 down, a season's best for him. Gebret Sadik of Norway, coping well with these conditions, in 24th place, well inside the top half. Great run for the Norwegian there, and Yamagishi of Japan in 25th place. Good run for Malcolm Hicks of New Zealand too, in 27th place. Well, here is that winning form of Lalisa Decisive. He's getting pretty used to it, this man. He makes a habit of finishing in the first three and on a regular enough basis taking the wins. Ethiopia, of course, mighty proud, a nation who have produced athletes that find you reaching for superlatives again and again with the likes of Gebreselassie and Kenenisa Bekele over the years. But Mara is out there now, and she is with the unfortunate Callum Hawkins. A fantastic run from the Briton for fourth place. Mara.
Callum, it was tough out there. You gave it absolutely everything. How do you feel?
I'm gutted. I mean, I really wanted the medal, so to get that close. Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
At least it wasn't worse than last time.
Yeah, you finished standing up, which is fantastic. The heat acclimatisation must have gone better this time.
Well, last time it went actually alright. I just got, before Gold Coast, I got a bug bite and ended up anti-inflammatories and a bit of pushing it too hard. Got it, but I think conditions were a lot better tonight. The humidity dropped a lot, and I maybe just gave them a little bit too much in the middle.
You look really strong out there. You look really relaxed, controlled. Is that how you felt?
Yeah, I just didn't have a pick-up. I think that's probably down to I got hurt 3 weeks out, so I've had a huge taper. To be honest, I've basically been tapering for 3 weeks. But I give them all and I couldn't do any more.
Yeah. I mean, twice, fourth in the world. That's really good. I know you wanted a medal, but fantastic running. Really well done.
Yeah, cheers, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Well, Decisive
Well, last time it
has
went.
divested himself of that flag. Kipruto, the bronze medalist, arm in arm and having a quick chat there. And Kipruto holding on to his red, black and green flag. There is the scene of Doha on this 9th and penultimate evening at these World Championships. In fact, we are, of course, now local time well into Sunday morning with the climactic action in the Khalifa Stadium just a few hours away on Sunday evening. But it's a clearer night than we've seen in our entire time here. I've been in the city for what, some 11 or 12 days, and most nights there's been a real haze hanging over the Qatari capital, which of course has been down to the extremely high humidity, which has made it tough just to be a member of the media working through busy days, the spectators as well, and all the team management and support staff, the thousands of volunteers upon which an event like this depends. Many of them have flown in and been suffering in the heat and humidity, but tonight conditions much kinder. Humidity under 50%, the temperature, well, last we heard it was around 29 degrees. That might sound high for a marathon, but actually compared with the 35 plus centigrade temperatures we put up with for the last 10 days, it was much more kind. Well, we have got an interview now with the newly crowned world champion. Here is Decisive.
Okay, going.
Lalisa, many congratulations on your win. How are the conditions out there?
Thank you very much. As you know, the weather condition is hot. I know before for select this race, I know it is hot, but I prepare for this race hot place, like the place like Adama, like Bishoftu, like Akaki. I did that place perfectly. So I'm very tired. As I tired, I get my result. Thank you very much.
Did you set out to win? Was that your plan?
Yeah, absolutely. I win because you remember 2013 on Moscow, I lost by the technique problem. This year I control everybody and I save my power and control the heat by water. Yeah, I win. I win. This is the great my plan.
Okay. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, youth.
Well, a young man who is very satisfied. He's come back for another bite at the chair, and he's got it right this time. Yes, in Moscow 2013, he took a silver medal, and that was behind Stephen Kiprotich of Uganda, who was the Olympic champion from London the previous year. We have the third placer as well with Mara now, I understand, Kenya's Amos Kipruto, the bronze medalist.
Many congratulations on your medal. How was it out there?
Actually, today's race was tough because Ethiopians was a strong team. But I'm happy because I secured position 3. I'm happy. And I carried the black of our Kenya and Kenya High. So I'm happy because this is my first World Championship. And I got a bronze medalist. So I'm really happy.
Will we see you at Tokyo next year at the Olympics?
Actually, if my management and the entire athletics body in Kenya will give me a chance. I will be there, and I'm happy to represent my country again.
Okay. Very many congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, the flashing lights of the torch, which sits above the Aspire complex and the Khalifa Stadium, a few miles away here from the Corniche, a couple of miles away from the Corniche as the crow flies. The traffic in Doha at times pretty testing, and I wanted to be said to be the journey from the big complex there where the main stadium is across the Corniche is not an easy one. But at other times the roads are an absolute dream. It's like any other big city around the world. Traffic can be 1 minute fantastic, the next sometimes inexplicably absolutely awful. That is the Spiral Mosque, popular tourist attraction. Also houses a library. There's the central big business district. Pretty astonishing, that skyline just to the north of the course. And once again, confirmation for you of the men's marathon result. Gold and silver for Ethiopia. Lalisa Decisive and Mozinet Geremu bringing joy to Addis Ababa and the rest of that proud distance running nation. Amos Kipruto taking the bronze for Kenya. He said just now he's very pleased to get on the rostrum. Callum Hawkins clearly had been fighting back the tears, not very successfully, for his second consecutive fourth place at a World Championships, the Britain. What a brave run from him. And Stephen Makoka there, fighting fifth for South Africa. There's the other men who finished inside the top 20, including the 2014 champion Geoffrey Kirui, a season's best for him, 2:13.54. He was so nearly great. Stephen Kiprotich, the 2013 champion and 2012 Olympic champion, in 18th place. And India's Thonakal Gopi, good run from him, just outside the top 20 with 2:15.57. Kawauchi in 29th place in his fourth marathon of the year, the man from Japan who normally runs 9 or 10 marathons a year, not having a great day at the office on this occasion. Says he doesn't like the heat anyway. The Dane Nijhuis taking a 31st place, and Zimbabwe's Nkube in 2:18 also there. Andrew Epperson in 46th place for the USA, and Ukraine's Igor Borotsov with 2:26.11 down in 50th place. Well, they will all have run their hearts out. It has been a special evening once again here on the Corniche. The conditions so much kinder to all the athletes out there. We've enjoyed this race immensely. Mari Yamauchi and myself, Tim Hutchings. I hope you have too. It's been a good night once more, and there's only one more to come at these 2017 IAAF World Athletics Championships. We hope to see you tomorrow, of course, in our coverage. But for now, bye-bye from the Corniche, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.